Story 1. My wife went live on TikTok from our kitchen, laughing as she announced, "I'm finally free of him, divorce papers filed today," while dramatically waving her naked ring finger at the camera. When her followers asked if she was worried about money, she smirked and said, "He's too stupid to even read the paperwork." I just watched from the doorway, smiled, and said, "Indeed, finally free." That was yesterday. This morning, reality hit her hard during our first meeting with attorneys when she learned the truth. The prenuptial agreement she dismissed as standard paperwork actually entitled me to 85% of our assets due to her documented infidelity. Her mocking laughter quickly turned to desperate bargaining as she realized the luxury lifestyle she'd been flaunting online was about to disappear. The kitchen light caught the diamond on her phone case as Madison held it at arm's length, angling for the perfect shot. She'd positioned herself against the marble countertops I'd had installed last spring, the one she'd spent 3 weeks selecting. Her voice had that practiced lilt she used for her followers, bright and conspiratorial. "So, you guys have been asking about the ring situation," she said, wiggling her bare left hand. The absence of her wedding band seemed to delight her. "Well, buckle up because today is literally the best day of my life." I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room, grocery bag still in my hands. She hadn't heard me come in. The garage door opener had been broken for a week, so I'd been using the front entrance. One more thing on my list to fix, though that list no longer seemed particularly relevant. I filed for divorce this morning. Madison's announcement came with a laugh that sounded rehearsed. I know, some of you saw this coming. You're all so intuitive. But yes, I am officially free. The comments must have been rolling in because she kept glancing at the screen, her smile widening. "Oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you for the support. This has been such a journey, and I couldn't have done it without this community." A journey. 5 years of marriage reduced to content for an audience that didn't know her maiden name. Wait, someone's asking about money. Madison's eyes sparkled with something that looked like genuine amusement. Am I worried about finances? Girl, no. He's too stupid to even read the paperwork. Like, I'm serious. The man just signs whatever I put in front of him. That part was true, in a sense. I had signed the documents she'd placed on my desk 6 days ago. Signed them after reading every single word, every clause, every stipulation. Signed them with my attorney's voice still fresh in my mind, walking me through exactly what Madison had filed and what it would mean. I set the grocery bags on the floor as quietly as possible. The tactical error she'd made wasn't in filing for divorce. People fall out of love, relationships end, and sometimes separation is the healthiest option for everyone involved. No, her mistake was in the method she'd chosen and the assumptions she'd made about the man she'd been married to. "Honestly, I'm going to be living my best life now," Madison continued, her audience clearly eating up every word. "No more pretending, no more playing the perfect wife. Just me, being authentic, showing up as my true self." Her true self. I wondered which version that was. The woman I'd met at a charity fundraiser 7 years ago, articulate and passionate about early childhood literacy? The bride who'd cried during our vows, promising forever? Or this version, performing her liberation for strangers who measured their approval in heart-shaped icons? Some of you are asking if I feel bad. Madison tilted her head, considering the question with theatrical sincerity. "Look, I tried. I really did. But you can't stay in a relationship where you're not growing, right? Where you're not seen. I deserve happiness. We all deserve happiness." The philosophy was sound, delivered with the depth of a fortune cookie. What she didn't mention, what wouldn't play well with her followers, was Trevor. Or how I'd found the text messages 3 months ago. Or the hotel receipts from their weekend getaways, charged to the credit card she thought I never checked. I could have confronted her then. Part of me had wanted to, if only to see her face when she realized I knew. But my attorney, Patricia Huang, had given me different advice during our first consultation. "Emotion is your enemy right now," Patricia had said, her office overlooking the downtown skyline. "Your prenuptial agreement has an infidelity clause. If you can document her affair without alerting her, if you can let her proceed thinking she has the upper hand, the advantage will be entirely yours when we get to settlement." So I documented. Quietly. Methodically. Screenshots of messages saved to a separate cloud account she didn't know existed. Photographs of Trevor's car parked outside our house on the 3 afternoons I'd supposedly been at extended business meetings. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels I'd never slept in. The evidence sat in a folder on Patricia's desk, indexed and cross-referenced. Madison thought she was playing chess while I struggled with checkers. She had no idea we weren't even playing the same game. "Anyway, I'm going to do a full story time about this whole thing soon," Madison was saying, finally wrapping up her broadcast. "But right now I just wanted to share this moment with you all. Single Madison is going to be so fun. Get ready." She ended the stream and immediately checked the analytics, her thumb scrolling rapidly. The validation was instantaneous, measured in views and comments. She'd gotten what she wanted from her announcement, that digital applause that seemed to matter more than anything happening in actual rooms with actual people. Indeed, I said, stepping fully into the kitchen. Finally free. Madison spun around, her phone clattering onto the counter. The color drained from her face, then rushed back in a flood of red. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. I picked up the grocery bags and began unpacking them, setting items on the counter with deliberate calm. Milk in the refrigerator. Bread in the pantry. Coffee beans in the canister by the espresso machine she'd insisted we needed. You were supposed to be at work. Her voice had lost its performance quality, becoming sharp and defensive. Took a half day. Figured we might need to talk. I folded the reusable bags and tucked them into the drawer where we kept them. Though I see you've already made your announcement. Very modern of you, really. Why have a difficult conversation when you can broadcast your marriage ending to 12,000 strangers? Don't. Madison crossed her arms. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what it's been like, living with someone who's never really present, who treats marriage like another item on a to-do list. The accusation was familiar. She'd made versions of it before, usually when she was feeling guilty about something and needed to preemptively shift blame. I'd been too focused on work. Too emotionally unavailable. Too content with quiet evenings at home instead of the constant social activity she craved. Some of it might have even been true. I had thrown myself into building my consulting firm, working long hours to establish the client base that now provided our comfortable lifestyle. But I'd also been present for the moments that mattered, or so I thought. Apparently, my definition of presence and hers had diverged somewhere along the way. You're right, I said, which seemed to surprise her. I probably could have been more attentive. Relationships take work, and maybe I didn't put in enough. Madison blinked, momentarily disarmed by the admission. Oh. Well. I'm glad you can at least acknowledge that. Absolutely. We both made mistakes. I closed the refrigerator and turned to face her fully. Of course, some mistakes have more significant consequences than others. But we'll get into all that tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning? The attorney meeting. 9 o'clock at Patricia Huang's office downtown. You should have received the notice from your lawyer. David Chen, right? I've heard he's competent, if a bit prone to underestimating opponents. Madison's expression shifted, uncertainty creeping in at the edges. How do you know who my attorney is? Professional networks. Small city, relatively speaking. Most of the divorce attorneys know each other, at least by reputation. I glanced at my watch. I've got a few calls to make before dinner. Were you planning to eat here, or are you heading out? The question was pointed, and we both knew it. She'd been spending most evenings away, coming home late with explanations that grew increasingly thin. Tonight she seemed uncertain which option to choose, caught between maintaining her declaration of freedom and the practical reality that she still lived in this house. I'm meeting friends, she finally said. I'll be back late. Or maybe I won't come back at all. I can stay with Jessica. Whatever you prefer. I headed toward my office, then paused. Oh, and Madison? You might want to watch that TikTok again. The part where you said I was too stupid to read the paperwork. It's got quite a few views already. Could be relevant. I left her standing in the kitchen, confusion and the first hints of worry playing across her face. Let her wonder. Let her spend the evening reassuring herself that she'd outmaneuvered me, that her attorney had structured everything to her advantage. The revelation would be more satisfying if she walked into that conference room tomorrow morning still confident in her victory. My office was on the second floor, a converted bedroom with built-in shelves and a view of the backyard. I'd spent countless hours here, building financial models and client presentations, managing the details that had grown my one-man consulting operation into a firm with 6 employees and annual revenue approaching $3 million. Patricia answered on the second ring. I saw the TikTok. One of my paralegals follows her, apparently. She sent me the link. Then you know she's locked into her narrative. I settled into my desk chair, looking out at the garden Madison had hired a landscaper to design but never actually spent time in. The question is whether she's locked into the settlement her attorney proposed. Patricia's voice carried the satisfaction of a professional who knew she held better cards than the other side suspected. Have you reviewed the counteroffer I sent over? Read it twice. It's exactly what we discussed. She gets the house with the understanding that she'll need to refinance to buy out my equity, 15% of the investment accounts, her car, and whatever personal belongings she wants. I keep the business, the rest of the investments, the vacation property, and my retirement accounts. And if she rejects it? Then we proceed to discovery, present the evidence of her affair, and invoke the infidelity clause in the prenup. At which point the division shifts dramatically in your client's favor. Patricia made a sound of approval. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I've got to tell you, most people in your position want to go scorched earth immediately. They want the satisfaction of watching their spouse realize they've been caught. That's letting emotion drive strategy. You told me that the first day. I did. But knowing something intellectually and actually implementing it when your marriage is imploding are two different things. You've shown remarkable restraint. Restraint. I suppose that was one word for it. Another might be calculated patience. Or perhaps just the exhaustion that comes from realizing the person you'd built a life with had checked out long before they'd filed the paperwork to make it official. The meeting tomorrow, I said. Walk me through how you expect it to play out. David Chen will come in confident. He's probably told Madison that the settlement he proposed is fair, maybe even generous to you. He won't have disclosed the prenup's infidelity clause to her in detail because most people don't read those things carefully, and most attorneys assume they won't be invoked. But you had me sign an acknowledgement that I'd read and understood every provision. Because I'm thorough, and because I suspected even back then that Madison might not be in this for the long haul. Call it instinct. Patricia paused, and I heard papers rustling. Tomorrow, I'll present our counteroffer. Chen will likely object, say it's unreasonable. Then I'll mention that we have documented evidence of infidelity and would prefer to settle this amicably rather than proceed to a contested divorce where that evidence becomes part of the public record. And Madison? Will realize that her social media audience is about to get a very different story than the one she's been telling. My guess is she'll want to negotiate. The satisfaction I felt hearing this plan laid out should have bothered me more than it did. I'd never thought of myself as vindictive. But watching Madison perform her freedom on camera while disparaging me to thousands of strangers had crystallized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences and the reality that actions ripple outward in ways we can't always control. We talked through a few more details, then Patricia had to take another call. I sat in my office as the afternoon light faded, thinking about the road that had led here. There hadn't been one catastrophic moment that destroyed the marriage. Instead, there'd been an accumulation of small disappointments, a gradual recognition that the woman I'd married and the woman sharing my house had become different people. Or maybe they'd always been different, and I'd simply been too optimistic to see it. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother, Ethan. Saw Madison's TikTok. You okay? Fine, I typed back. Tomorrow should be interesting. Need anything? Just your cabin for a few weeks once this is done. Could use some time away from the city. Anytime. Keys are in the usual spot. Ethan lived 3 hours north, his life a deliberate contrast to mine. He'd walked away from corporate law 5 years ago to buy a cabin on a lake and write mystery novels that sold well enough to support his deliberately simple lifestyle. We'd grown closer after his divorce, bonding over the shared experience of watching marriages dissolve in slow motion. Dinner was a solitary affair, pasta and salad eaten at the kitchen counter while I reviewed client emails. The normalcy of it felt surreal. Tomorrow my life would shift in ways both significant and subtle, yet tonight I was still going through the motions of ordinary routines. Madison came home just after midnight. I heard her car in the driveway, the front door opening and closing, her footsteps on the stairs. She went directly to the guest bedroom she'd been sleeping in for the past month, the physical separation preceding the legal one. The house settled into silence, two people existing in separate orbits under the same roof. I didn't sleep well. Not from anxiety exactly, but from the hyper-awareness of standing on a threshold. By this time tomorrow, everything would be different. The pretense of normalcy would be stripped away, and whatever came next would begin to take shape. Morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. I dressed carefully, not for intimidation but for seriousness. Navy suit, white shirt, conservative tie. The armor of a man who takes meetings seriously and expects to be taken seriously in return. Madison emerged from the guest room at 7:30, already dressed in the designer outfit she probably thought conveyed confidence. She'd clearly spent time on her appearance, makeup carefully applied, hair styled in loose waves that looked effortless but definitely weren't. I'll drive separately, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I don't think we need to show up together. Makes sense. I poured coffee into a travel mug. See you there. She left without another word, her expensive bag slung over one shoulder. Through the window, I watched her pause before getting into her car, phone already out, probably checking the overnight engagement on yesterday's broadcast. The validation she sought from strangers seemed to sustain her in ways our actual relationship never had. Patricia's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of restrained elegance that signaled serious money. The reception area had modern art on the walls and furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost more than most people's cars. I arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from years of client meetings. Patricia met me in the lobby, her handshake firm and her expression professionally neutral. David just texted. They're running 5 minutes behind. Traffic or deliberate strategy? With David? Could be either. He likes to keep people slightly off balance. She guided me toward a conference room. How are you feeling? Calm. Focused. Ready for this to be over. Good. Remember, let me do most of the talking. If David tries to engage you directly, especially if he gets aggressive, take a breath before responding. Don't let him bait you into saying something we'll regret. The conference room had windows overlooking the city, a long table that could seat 12, and the faint smell of coffee and anxiety that probably permeated every divorce attorney's office in America. I sat on the side facing the door, Patricia to my right, our materials arranged neatly in front of us. Madison and David Chen arrived exactly 10 minutes late. She'd composed herself since I'd seen her this morning, her expression carefully blank. David was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with expensive glasses and the kind of haircut that required regular maintenance. "Good morning," Patricia said, her tone pleasant but businesslike. "Shall we get started?" David launched into what was clearly a prepared statement about his client's position and the reasonableness of the settlement they'd proposed. Madison nodded along, playing the role of wronged wife seeking only what was fair. I watched her performance with detached curiosity, wondering how long she'd maintain it. "My client has endured significant emotional distress during this marriage," David was saying. "She's entitled to maintain the lifestyle she's become accustomed to, and our proposed settlement reflects that reality." Patricia let him finish, then slid a folder across the table. "This is our counteroffer. As you'll see, it differs substantially from what you've proposed." David opened the folder, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to barely concealed alarm as he read. Madison leaned over to look at the documents, her face going pale. "This is ridiculous," David said, recovering his composure. "Your client is proposing to keep 85% of the marital assets. No judge is going to approve this." "Actually," Patricia said, her voice calm, "the split is based on the prenuptial agreement both parties signed before their marriage. Specifically, Clause 17, subsection C, which addresses division of assets in cases of documented infidelity." Madison's head snapped up. "What?" "The prenuptial agreement," Patricia continued, "which you signed in the presence of your own attorney and which included a 72-hour review period, contains very specific language about asset division in the event of adultery. My client has documentation of your affair with Trevor Morrison, including but not limited to text messages, photographs, hotel receipts, and eyewitness accounts." The silence that followed was absolute. Madison looked at David, then at me, then back at David. "I don't. You said the prenup was standard. You said it was just protecting his business." David's expression suggested he was rapidly reassessing every decision that had led to this moment. "We should take a break. I need to consult with my client privately." "Of course." Patricia gestured toward a smaller conference room down the hall. "Take your time." They left, Madison's heels clicking rapidly against the polished floor. Through the glass walls, I could see them talking, Madison's gestures becoming increasingly agitated, David's posture defensive. "That went well," I said. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. "David's a decent attorney, but he made the classic mistake of assuming his client was being honest with him about the state of the marriage. Madison probably told him you were emotionally absent, that the marriage had been over for years, that there was no one else. He built his strategy around that narrative. And now? Now he's explaining to her exactly how badly she's miscalculated." 20 minutes later, they returned. Madison's makeup couldn't hide the fact that she'd been crying. David looked like a man who just realized he was playing a game where the rules had changed without notification. "We'd like to discuss the possibility of a revised settlement," David said, his earlier confidence replaced by careful diplomacy. "One that takes into account the additional information you've presented." Patricia nodded. "We're willing to negotiate. However, the prenuptial agreement provides a clear framework for asset division under these circumstances. Any settlement will need to reflect that reality." What followed was 2 hours of tense discussion, numbers and percentages and legal language that boiled down to a simple truth. Madison had filed for divorce thinking she held the advantage, and she'd been catastrophically wrong. "The final settlement we agreed to gave me 70% of the assets, the business, and the vacation property. Madison kept the house, but only after refinancing to buy out my equity at current market value. She got 30% of the investment accounts and her car. Everything split cleanly, no lingering financial ties beyond the refinancing deadline 6 months away. There's one more condition," Patricia said as we prepared to sign. "My client requests that Mrs. Hansen refrain from discussing the divorce, the settlement, or her ex-husband on any social media platform. Violation of this agreement will result in financial penalties as outlined in Section 12. Madison's face went rigid. "You're trying to silence me." "We're protecting my client's privacy and reputation," Patricia corrected. "Given yesterday's TikTok broadcast, we feel this provision is reasonable." David consulted with Madison in urgent whispers. She shook her head repeatedly, but he kept talking, clearly explaining that she had no leverage to object. Finally, she nodded, her expression bitter. We signed the documents in silence, the scratch of pens on paper marking the end of 5 years of marriage. When it was done, Madison stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. "I hope you're happy. I hope this is everything you wanted." "I wanted a marriage," I said quietly. But we don't always get what we want, do we? She left without responding, David trailing behind with an apologetic glance at Patricia. The door closed, and suddenly the conference room felt very large and very empty. You okay? Patricia asked. Honestly? I don't know yet. I stood, looking out at the city below. Is it supposed to feel like this? Like winning and losing at the same time? Every divorce feels like that for at least one person. Sometimes both. She began gathering her materials. You protected yourself financially, which is smart. But the emotional side? That takes longer to process. I left the office an hour later, paperwork signed and filed, the machinery of legal dissolution in motion. The rain had started, a steady drizzle that matched the gray sky. I sat in my car for several minutes before starting the engine, watching water stream down the windshield. My phone had dozens of notifications. Missed calls from friends who'd seen Madison's TikTok. Texts asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if the rumors were true. I ignored them all except one from Ethan. How'd it go? It's done, I typed back. Heading to the office to wrap up some things, then I might take you up on that cabin offer sooner than expected. Doors open. Beers in the fridge. Come whenever. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of practical details. Separating shared accounts. Changing beneficiaries on insurance policies. Updating my address with various institutions even though technically I was still living in the house until Madison completed the refinancing. She avoided me completely during this period, sleeping at friends' houses or hotels, coming by only when she knew I'd be at work to collect clothes and personal items. We communicated through attorneys or terse text messages about logistics. The house that had once felt too small somehow became vast and echo-filled with only one person in it. My business partner, Rachel, had been remarkably understanding about my distraction. Take the time you need, she'd said when I'd explained the situation. The firm isn't going anywhere, and you've earned some space to deal with this. But I found myself working longer hours rather than fewer, using client projects as a way to avoid sitting alone with my thoughts. There was something comforting about financial models and strategic planning, problems that could be solved with data and analysis rather than emotions I couldn't quite name. 3 weeks after the attorney meeting, the refinancing came through. Madison's parents had apparently helped with the down payment, probably while giving me the kind of disapproving looks that suggested they believed whatever version of events she'd told them. The house officially became hers, and I moved the last of my belongings into a furnished apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and absolutely no personality. Ethan drove down to help, his pickup truck loaded with boxes and furniture. Nice place, he said, looking around at the sterile perfection of it. Very temporary. That's the point. I'm only staying a few months until I figure out what's next. And you're still coming up to the cabin? Next week. I need a few days to settle the office, make sure Rachel doesn't need anything urgent, then I'm all yours. We ordered food and ate on the floor since I hadn't bothered with a dining table. Ethan had the wisdom not to ask too many questions about how I was doing, instead filling me in on his latest book project and the saga of his neighbor's ongoing war with a family of raccoons. You know what's weird? I said after we'd exhausted the safe topics. I thought I'd be angrier. I thought when everything was final, I'd feel this sense of righteous satisfaction. But mostly I just feel tired. Divorce is exhausting. You spend all this energy protecting yourself legally and financially, and then when that's done, you're left with the emotional wreckage and no instruction manual for cleaning it up. Ethan leaned back against the wall. Give yourself time to be tired. You've earned it. That night, alone in the apartment for the first time, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Madison and me at our wedding, her smile radiant and apparently genuine. Vacation pictures from Costa Rica, both of us tanned and laughing. Christmas morning 2 years ago, surrounded by wrapping paper and the kind of domestic contentment that seemed impossible now. Had she been unhappy even then? Had I missed obvious signs, too focused on work and my own assumptions about how marriage was supposed to function? Or had something shifted later, a gradual dissatisfaction that fed on itself until Trevor appeared and offered an alternative that seemed more exciting than the reality we'd built? I'd probably never know the complete truth. People rarely did after divorces, left instead with competing narratives and unanswerable questions. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, then curiosity won out. This is Jessica, Madison's friend. I know it's not my place, but I thought you should know she's struggling. I'm not excusing what she did, but she's actually devastated about how everything turned out. She never meant to hurt you this badly. I stared at the message for a long time, conflicting reactions warring inside me. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, listing all the ways Madison had very deliberately hurt me. Another part recognized that Jessica was probably trying to be kind in her own way, offering information she thought might provide closure. In the end, I typed, I appreciate you reaching out. I hope Madison finds whatever she's looking for. But this door is closed now. I deleted the message thread and put my phone on silent. Madison's emotional state wasn't my responsibility anymore, and whatever devastation she felt was a consequence of choices she'd made, fully aware of what she was risking. The week at Ethan's cabin turned into 2, then 3. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed the silence of the woods, the absence of constant digital noise. Days fell into a rhythm of morning runs on trails that wound through pine trees, afternoons spent reading on the dock, evenings cooking simple meals and talking with my brother about everything and nothing. "You seem different," Ethan said one night as we sat by the fire pit, watching sparks spiral into the darkness. "Different how?" "Lighter, maybe. Like you've put down something heavy you'd been carrying without realizing it." He was right, though I hadn't consciously noticed the shift. Somewhere between leaving the city and spending these weeks in deliberate quiet, the weight of the divorce had started to feel less crushing. I wasn't happy exactly, but I'd found something adjacent to peace. "I think I'd stopped recognizing myself," I said. Being married to Madison required becoming a version of myself that fit into her life, her social media presence, her idea of what success looked like. And I just went along with it because that's what I thought you were supposed to do in a marriage. Compromise. Adapt. There's a difference between adapting and erasing yourself. "Yeah." I poked at the fire with a stick, watching flames catch on new wood. "I'm starting to see that." I returned to the city 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, moving into a house I'd purchased in a quiet neighborhood away from the social circles Madison and I had occupied. It was smaller than what we'd had, a craftsman bungalow with a yard that actually seemed manageable and a front porch made for evening reading. Rachel threw a small housewarming party, just close friends and colleagues who'd supported me through the divorce. We grilled food in the backyard and talked about anything except failed marriages and legal settlements. It felt good to laugh, to engage in the easy companionship of people who knew me before Madison and would know me after. "So what's next for you?" my friend Derek asked as the party wound down. "Besides work and settling into this place?" "Honestly? I have no idea." The admission felt liberating rather than frightening. For the first time in years, I don't have a 5-year plan. I'm just figuring out what I actually want instead of what I thought I was supposed to want. That sounds healthy. Terrifying, but healthy. It was both those things. Rebuilding a life from the foundation up meant confronting questions I'd been avoiding. What did I enjoy doing when no one was watching or measuring success? What kind of relationship did I actually want if I ever risked that again? Who was I outside the roles I'd been performing? 3 months after the divorce, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Trevor. He was in the produce section, looking uncomfortable in the way people do when they encounter someone they've wronged. For a moment, I considered just walking past, pretending I hadn't seen him. Then curiosity overcame avoidance. "Trevor." He turned, his expression cycling through surprise, guilt, and resignation. "Hey. Listen, about everything that happened, save it." I kept my voice neutral. "I'm not interested in apologies or explanations. I am curious about one thing, though. Was it worth it?" "What?" "The affair. The drama. Blowing up 2 marriages, because I assume your wife found out eventually. Was whatever you and Madison had worth all that?" Trevor looked down at the basket in his hands, containing what appeared to be the ingredients for a very sad bachelor dinner. "She ended it a month ago. Said I was too clingy, that she needed space to figure out who she really was. My divorce isn't final yet, but it's heading the same direction as yours." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. Madison had wanted the excitement of something forbidden, the validation of being desired by someone new. Once that became her actual reality, once Trevor was available and invested, he'd probably become just as mundane as I had been. "I hope you figure things out," I said, and meant it. Holding on to anger at Trevor felt pointless. He'd been a catalyst, not the cause. If it hadn't been him, it would have been someone else. I paid for my groceries and drove home, thinking about the strange mathematics of human relationships. How easily things could fracture and how hard they were to repair. How people could share years of their lives and still remain fundamentally mysterious to each other. My phone rang as I was putting away the food. An unknown number, but I'd stopped being suspicious of those. "Hello? Is this Marcus Jensen?" A woman's voice, professional and slightly uncertain. "Speaking. My name is Amy Lawson. I'm a producer for a podcast about modern relationships and divorce. Someone sent me a link to your ex-wife's TikTok from a few months ago, and I've been doing some research into your case. I was wondering if you'd be interested in being interviewed about your experience. I appreciate the offer, but no." The answer came easily. "What happened in my marriage is private, and I'd like to keep it that way." "I understand. But your story could help a lot of people who are going through similar situations. The prenuptial agreement angle, the social media component, the way you handled." "I'm going to stop you there." I leaned against the kitchen counter, looking out at the backyard where evening light filtered through the trees. I didn't handle my divorce as some kind of strategic maneuver or public lesson. I protected myself legally because I had to, and I tried to move through a difficult situation with as much dignity as possible. That's not a story. It's just life. Amy pressed a bit more, professional but persistent, then finally accepted my refusal with grace. After we hung up, I thought about Madison and her hunger for an audience, her need to perform her life for strangers. Maybe that's where we differed most fundamentally. She'd wanted witnesses to validate her existence. I just wanted to exist, quietly and authentically, with someone who saw me without needing to broadcast it. 6 months post-divorce, I went on my first date. Her name was Claire, a colleague of Rachel's who taught environmental science at the university. We met for coffee on a Saturday afternoon, both of us clearly nervous and trying to hide it. Full disclosure, Claire said after we'd ordered. Rachel told me about your divorce. I'm sorry you went through that. Thanks. It was rough, but I'm in a better place now. I meant it. The raw edges had smoothed somewhat, the constant ache replaced by occasional twinges. What about you? Rachel mentioned you'd been through something similar? 3 years ago. My ex-husband decided he wanted to find himself, which apparently required a 23-year-old yoga instructor and our joint savings account. She smiled wryly. I'm also in a better place now, but it took a while. We talked for 3 hours, conversation flowing easily between us. Claire was smart and funny, with the kind of grounded presence that came from someone who'd rebuilt herself after loss. I liked her immediately, though I was careful not to project too much onto what was just a first date. Can I be honest about something? Claire asked as we walked to our cars. I'm not looking to rush into anything serious. I like you, and I'd like to see you again, but slow is good for me right now. Slow is good for me too. I found myself relaxing more fully, relieved that we were on the same page. How about dinner next week? There's this Italian place near campus that's supposed to be great. That sounds perfect. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine optimism about what might come next. Not certainty or grand passion, but the quiet possibility of building something real with someone who understood that real meant imperfect and evolving. 1 year after the divorce, I was cleaning out a closet when I found a box of wedding photos Madison had left behind. I sat on the floor surrounded by images of people we used to be, remembering that day with a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness for what we'd lost, relief for what I'd escaped, gratitude for the lessons that had come wrapped in pain. I thought about keeping a few photos, some acknowledgement that those years had happened and meant something. But in the end, I put the entire box in storage, not destroyed but not displayed either. Let the past be the past, accessible if needed but not defining the present. My relationship with Claire had developed slowly, exactly as we'd both wanted. We'd learned each other's rhythms and boundaries, building trust deliberately rather than falling into the intense passion that often masked fundamental incompatibilities. She'd met Ethan and Rachel. I'd met her sister and her closest friends. We were talking tentatively about moving in together, though neither of us was rushing toward that decision. You seem happy, Rachel said one afternoon at the office. Really happy, not just performing happiness for people who are asking. I am happy. Or at least, I'm content, which might be better. I considered how to articulate what had changed. I think I spent so long trying to be the person Madison needed me to be that I forgot to figure out who I actually was. This past year has been about rediscovering that, and building a life that actually fits instead of just looks good from the outside. Madison ever try to reach out? Not directly. Jessica messages occasionally with updates I never asked for. Apparently, Madison moved to Seattle, started over somewhere new. I hope that works out for her, genuinely. But it's not my story anymore. That was the truth of it. Madison's choices and consequences were her own to navigate. I'd protected myself when necessary, but I wasn't interested in vengeance or in watching her struggle. The best revenge, if you could even call it that, was building a life that felt authentic and fulfilling without needing to prove anything to anyone. 18 months after the divorce, I sold my consulting firm. Rachel bought me out at a fair price, taking over full ownership with my blessing. I'd spent 15 years building that business, but somewhere along the way, it had stopped feeling like mine. The work had become rote, the satisfaction diminishing. What are you going to do? Claire asked the night after the sale went through. I'm not entirely sure yet. We were at her apartment, cooking dinner together in the companionable silence that had become one of my favorite things about us. I'm thinking about teaching, maybe. Business school or something similar. Passing on what I've learned instead of just applying it over and over. That sounds like you. She smiled, chopping vegetables with the focused precision she brought to most tasks. You're a natural teacher. I've watched you explain things to people, and you light up in a way you never did talking about client work. She was right. The part of consulting I'd always enjoyed most was mentoring younger colleagues, helping them see patterns and develop strategies. Maybe there was something there worth exploring. I started adjunct teaching that fall, one class on business strategy and entrepreneurship. The students were engaged and challenging, asking questions that forced me to think beyond my established frameworks. I found myself energized by the work in ways I hadn't been in years. Claire and I moved in together that winter, finding a house that felt like ours rather than mine or hers. We painted walls and argued good-naturedly about furniture placement and learned the specific rhythms of sharing space with someone you actually liked. It was domestic and ordinary and exactly what I needed. 2 years after the divorce, I ran into Madison at a conference in San Francisco. I was there to give a talk on strategic planning. She was apparently covering the event for some lifestyle blog she'd started. We saw each other across the hotel lobby, and for a moment, I could see her calculating whether to approach or pretend she hadn't noticed me. She approached. "Marcus." "Hi." Madison looked different, her style more subdued than the designer perfection she'd cultivated before. "How are you?" "I'm well. You?" "Good. Better, actually. I'm doing freelance writing now, covering tech and lifestyle topics. It's not glamorous, but it feels more authentic than what I was doing before." We made small talk for a few minutes, the conversation polite and distant. I found myself feeling mostly indifferent to her presence, any residual anger or hurt long since processed and released. "I owe you an apology," Madison said finally, the words clearly difficult. "For how I handled everything. The TikTok especially, but really the whole end of our marriage. I was cruel, and you didn't deserve that." "I appreciate you saying that. I meant it, though the apology didn't change anything significant. I hope you're finding whatever you were looking for." "I think I'm starting to. It took some hard lessons, but I'm learning." She hesitated, then added, "You look happy." "That's good to see." "I am happy. It took some rebuilding, but I got there." We parted ways cordially, and I felt nothing but a mild sense of closure. Madison was someone I used to know, someone who'd been important once but belonged definitively to the past. I wished her well without needing to be part of her present. That evening, I called Claire from my hotel room. "Guess who I ran into today?" "Madison?" Her tone was carefully neutral. "How'd you know?" "Lucky guess. How was it?" "Completely fine, actually. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, she apologized for how things ended, and then we went our separate ways. It was anticlimactic." "That's probably healthy." I could hear Claire smiling. "It means you've really moved on. The past is just the past, not this emotionally charged thing you're still wrestling with." She was right, of course. The divorce had been devastating while I was in it, but from the distance of 2 years, it looked more like a necessary ending than a tragedy. Some relationships were meant to teach us things about ourselves, even if those lessons came wrapped in pain and legal paperwork. 3 years after the divorce, I asked Claire to marry me. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but on a quiet evening at Ethan's cabin, just the two of us watching the sunset over the lake. "I know we've both been through this before," I said. "And I know marriage is complicated and imperfect and requires constant work. But I want to do that work with you. Not because it's what we're supposed to do, but because I can't imagine building the rest of my life with anyone else." Claire said yes, and we spent the rest of the evening talking about what we wanted our marriage to look like. Not the wedding, though we'd plan that eventually, but the actual relationship. The values we'd prioritize. The boundaries we'd maintain. The ways we'd handle conflict and celebrate joy. "I want us to be intentional," Claire said. "About everything. Not letting things drift into patterns that don't serve us just because that's how couples are supposed to act." "Agreed. And I want us to be private about what matters most. Not secret, but private. Our relationship is for us first, not for performance or approval." We married that summer in a small ceremony at the cabin, just family and close friends. No social media announcements, no elaborate productions. Just two people committing to each other with clear eyes and grateful hearts, having learned enough from our past to appreciate what we'd found in our present. Looking back on everything that had happened, from Madison's TikTok announcement to that attorney meeting to this moment, I realized that the revenge I'd supposedly gotten wasn't really revenge at all. It was just consequences, the natural outcome of actions and choices. Madison had played a game assuming I didn't understand the rules, and she'd been wrong. The prenuptial agreement had protected me financially, but the real protection had come from learning to value myself enough to walk away from someone who didn't. The best part of my life now wasn't that Madison had lost or that I'd won. It was that I'd built something genuine and sustainable with someone who saw me clearly and chose me anyway. Claire and I weren't perfect, and our marriage wouldn't be either. But it would be real and intentional and ours. Standing on the dock that evening, Claire beside me with her hand in mine, I felt the last residual weight of my first marriage finally lift away. The past was complete, its lessons learned and integrated. The future was uncertain but promising, full of possibility rather than prescription. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked. "How grateful I am that things turned out exactly as they did. Even the painful parts that got me here." She squeezed my hand. "Me too." And that, finally, was the real ending to the story that had started with a TikTok announcement and a smug assumption of victory. Not revenge or comeuppance, but simply the recognition that sometimes the best outcome is learning who you actually are and finding someone who wants to know that person. Everything else is just noise, eventually fading into the background of a life well lived. Story 2.
My sister called to announce she'd be wearing a white gown to my wedding to show we're equals in the family. When I voiced my concern, she laughed and said, "It's not like anyone will confuse us, you're the plain one." I just said, "Absolutely. Wear whatever makes you happy." That was 2 weeks ago. At the reception, my wedding coordinator, who'd been fully briefed, ensured every server knew which guest was wearing an unauthorized white dress. The evening became legendary when my photographer accidentally excluded her from all family photos, the DJ forgot to announce her during introductions, and somehow every guest with a glass of red wine or chai tea seemed to stumble near her perfect white gown. By dessert, she'd left in tears. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing seating charts at the kitchen table. My phone lit up with Vanessa's name, and I picked up expecting last-minute RSVP questions or maybe a request to bring her current boyfriend as A+1. "Hey, Liv. So I've been shopping, and I found the most incredible dress for your wedding." Her voice had that particular brightness that always preceded something calculated. "It's this gorgeous white silk gown with beading on the bodice. Very elegant. Very bridal, actually." I stopped mid-sip of my coffee. "White?" "Yes. I know what you're thinking, but honestly, it's not like we're living in some outdated tradition where only the bride can wear white. We're modern women. Besides, it'll show that we're equals in the family. You know, 2 successful daughters. 2 beautiful women celebrating together." The pause stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. Vanessa had always been the golden child, the one who'd modeled in high school, who'd landed the consulting job straight out of college, who'd dated the kind of men our mother sighed over. I'd been the practical one. The daughter who became a project manager, who wore sensible shoes, who'd met Marcus at a work conference rather than some glamorous party. "Van, you know that's traditionally considered." She cut me off with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Oh, come on. It's not like anyone will confuse us. You're the plain one, remember? I think we're safe from any identity crisis." Another laugh, lighter this time, as if she'd made a harmless joke. "Plus, I already bought it. The alterations are being done as we speak." Something cold settled in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "Absolutely. Wear whatever makes you happy." "See? I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable about these things. That's what I love about you, Liv, you're not dramatic like other brides." After we hung up, I sat there staring at the seating chart. The names blurred together. Marcus walked in from the garage, wiping motor oil from his hands with a rag, and stopped when he saw my face. "What happened?" I told him. He went very still, the way he does when he's processing something that makes him angry. Marcus doesn't yell. He gets quiet and focused, which is somehow more intimidating. "She said what to you?" "That I'm the plain one. But it's fine. It's just Vanessa being Vanessa." "It's not fine." He tossed the rag on the counter and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my mother. She'll have that dress off Vanessa before." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I don't want your mom fighting this battle. I don't want anyone fighting this battle." Marcus studied me for a long moment. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Vanessa has spent our entire lives making everything about her. She wore a cocktail dress to my college graduation that made people think she was the graduate. She announced her promotion at Dad's retirement party. She brought a date to my 30th birthday dinner who spent the whole night talking about her accomplishments. So what do you want to do?" I picked up my phone and scrolled to my wedding coordinator's number. Teresa had come highly recommended, a woman in her 50s who'd been coordinating weddings for 20 years and had seen, according to her, every possible flavor of family drama. "I want to make a phone call." Teresa answered on the second ring. "Liv. Everything okay? I need to schedule an emergency meeting. Tomorrow if possible. And I need you to bring your creative problem-solving hat." She arrived at our house the next morning with her tablet and a knowing look. I'd texted her a brief overview, and she'd responded with a single word, "delicious." Now she sat across from us at the dining table, fingers steepled under her chin. "Let me make sure I understand the situation. Your sister has announced she'll be wearing a white gown to your wedding. She's made disparaging comments about your appearance. And she's framed this as some sort of statement about equality." "That's accurate. And you want to handle this without direct confrontation, without uninviting her, and without looking like the villain?" "Exactly." Teresa smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of challenge. "I've coordinated 347 weddings. I've dealt with drunk uncles, fighting exes, disapproving in-laws, and one memorable incident involving a peacock. But the white dress? That's a classic. And here's what most people don't understand: a wedding coordinator's job isn't just about timing and logistics. It's about protecting the couple's vision and ensuring the day unfolds as it should. She opened her tablet and began taking notes. Tell me everything about your sister. Her personality, her triggers, what matters most to her. I thought about Vanessa. About how she'd been homecoming queen and prom queen. How she posted constant updates on social media, cultivating an image of effortless perfection. How she'd once cried for an hour because a photographer at a family reunion had caught her at a bad angle. She cares about appearance. About being seen as important, as central to everything. She needs validation from others. Social media presence? Extensive. She posts everything. Teresa made a note. Guest count? 150. Photographer? Jason Chen. He's done several weddings for my friends. Very professional, very talented. Have you met with him for a final consultation? Next week. Perfect. I'll need you to add something to that conversation. She pulled up a document on her tablet. Now, let's talk about your caterers, your DJ, and your bartenders. I'll need their contact information. And I need you to trust me completely with what I'm about to propose. Over the next hour, Teresa laid out a plan so subtle, so carefully orchestrated, that I found myself simultaneously horrified and impressed. Marcus kept interjecting with questions about legality and ethics, and Teresa addressed each one with the patience of a lawyer. Nothing I'm suggesting involves property damage, assault, or anything that crosses legal lines. What I'm proposing is strategic coordination and the natural consequences of someone violating social norms. Your sister is choosing to make a statement. We're simply ensuring that statement is received with the appropriate response. The meeting with Jason happened the following Tuesday at his studio downtown. He showed us samples from recent weddings, walked us through the timeline for the day, and confirmed the shot list we discussed months earlier. There's one more thing, I said, glancing at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. My sister will be wearing a white dress. Jason's eyebrows rose. White? Or cream, ivory, white. Bridal white. With beading. A long pause. I see. I'm not asking you to do anything unprofessional. But I need to know, in your artistic vision for the day, in the story you're telling through your photographs, how would you handle someone who's deliberately trying to draw attention away from the bride? Jason leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. In my artistic vision? I focus on the story the couple wants told. If someone is trying to rewrite that story, they're essentially decluttering themselves from the narrative. I wouldn't include shots that distract from the central love story. That would be poor storytelling. And family formals? Those are typically coordinated by the wedding party and coordinator. If someone isn't positioned properly when the shot is taken, or if they step away at an inopportune moment, I can only photograph who's present and properly arranged. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Jason a photo of Vanessa from her social media, a recent post where she was modeling the white dress in her apartment, twirling for the camera with a caption "Wedding season ready," sparkles emoji. Jason studied it carefully. Beautiful dress. Completely inappropriate for a guest. You know what? Let me make a note in my shot list. Avoid shots that could be misinterpreted as having two brides. Maintain clear visual hierarchy. Focus on Liv and Marcus as the central subjects in all frames. I felt something unclench in my chest. Thank you. Hey, I'm not doing anything except my job exceptionally well. It's not my fault if someone positions themselves poorly for photographs. The DJ came next. Marcus and I met with him at his office, a converted warehouse space filled with sound equipment and samples of lighting setups. Terrence was in his early 40s, energetic, with an impressive portfolio of weddings and corporate events. We discussed the timeline, the must-play songs, the do-not-play songs. Then I mentioned the situation. Terrence's expression shifted from professional enthusiasm to something more measured. Let me ask you something. During the reception, do you want announcements made for the wedding party entrance? Yes, we discussed that. You introduce each couple as they come in. And your sister, is she in the wedding party? No. She declined when I asked her to be a bridesmaid. Said the dress color wasn't flattering on her. So she's a regular guest. Correct. Terrence made a note on his tablet. Here's the thing about announcements. They're for the wedding party and immediate family, parents, sometimes grandparents. Regular guests don't get introduced because there are too many, and it would take forever. Now, if someone assumes they're getting announced just because they're related to the bride, and I don't have him on my list. That's not my error. That's a miscommunication on their part. What if she asked you directly to be introduced? Then I'd smile and tell her that all announcements were finalized with the bride and groom weeks ago, and I can't make changes without their explicit approval. And if she came to you in the middle of your wedding to demand an announcement? He shook his head. That would be wildly inappropriate, and I doubt she'd risk looking that entitled in front of everyone. Marcus grinned. You've dealt with this before. Brother, I've been DJing weddings for 15 years. I've seen it all. The attention seekers, the drama starters, the people who think every event is about them. Part of my job is reading the room and making sure the spotlight stays where it belongs, on the couple getting married. The next piece fell into place when Teresa connected me with a catering manager, a woman named Patricia who'd worked in high-end events for decades. We met at the venue during a tasting session, sampling appetizers and entree options. After we'd made our selections, I brought up the situation. Patricia listened without interrupting, then set down her pen with deliberate care. I need to be honest with you. What you're describing, a guest wearing white to deliberately upstage the bride, that's hostile behavior. And in my experience, hostile behavior at weddings tends to escalate. People get emotional, they drink, they make scenes. She looked directly at me. My staff's primary concern is safety and smooth service. If someone is acting in a way that could cause disruption, we need to be aware of that. I'm not asking your staff to do anything to her, I said carefully. I just want them to be prepared for potential drama. Of course. And here's what I'll do, I'll brief my team on the situation. They'll know who this guest is, and they'll be attentive to any situation involving her. Now, accidents happen at weddings. Someone carrying a tray might stumble. A guest moving quickly might bump into a server. Red wine gets spilled. Chai lattes get knocked over. These are natural occurrences in a crowded event with waitstaff navigating around dancing guests. Marcus frowned. You're not suggesting. Patricia held up a hand. I'm suggesting nothing except that my staff will do their jobs professionally. If your sister happens to be in an unfortunate location when an accident occurs, near the bar when someone's carrying drinks, near the dessert table when someone's serving chai, well, that's just bad luck. My servers will apologize profusely, offer to help clean up, and continue doing their jobs. And if she complains? Then we'll apologize again, explain that accidents happen at large events, and offer to arrange for dry cleaning. Everything by the book. Everything professional. Just a series of unfortunate coincidences. I met Teresa for coffee 3 days before the wedding. She had a folder with her, tabs color-coded, everything organized with military precision. Let's review. Jason knows not to include Vanessa in any formal family photos unless she's properly positioned, which she won't be because I'll be coordinating those shots and ensuring she's always just slightly out of frame or stepping away. Terrence has a list of who gets announced during the grand entrance, and Vanessa isn't on it. Patricia's staff knows who's wearing the white dress, and will be extra attentive to any situations involving her and potentially staining beverages. This feels elaborate. It's not elaborate. It's coordinated. Every vendor is simply doing their job with a heightened awareness of potential issues. Nothing unethical, nothing illegal. Just professional excellence with strategic timing. What if Vanessa figures it out? Figures what out? That servers had accidents? That the photographer was focused on the bride and groom? That the DJ followed the announcement list provided by the couple? Teresa's smile was serene. Olivia, your sister is choosing to violate a major social norm. She's counting on you being too polite to react, too concerned with keeping the peace. What we're doing is allowing natural consequences to unfold while ensuring your wedding remains beautiful and drama-free for you. The guests will notice. They'll notice someone wearing white to a wedding, yes. And they'll form their own opinions. If that person then seems to encounter a series of unfortunate events while everyone else has a lovely time, they'll draw their own conclusions. The morning of the wedding arrived with unexpected clarity, no clouds, temperature perfect for the outdoor ceremony we'd planned. I woke up in the hotel suite I was sharing with my bridesmaids, feeling surprisingly calm. My phone had 17 messages. 16 were well wishes from friends and family. One was from Vanessa, getting ready. You're going to die when you see this dress. Can't wait to celebrate you today, red heart emoji. I showed it to my maid of honor, Rachel, who'd known Vanessa since high school and had never particularly liked her. Oh, that's rich. Celebrate you while wearing a wedding dress herself. Rachel shook her head. I know you have some sort of plan with Teresa, but honestly, I would have uninvited her. That's what she'd want. Drama with her at the center, playing the victim. This way, she gets to come to the wedding. She just might not have quite the experience she's anticipating. Hair and makeup took 3 hours. The photographer captured getting ready shots, my mother tearing up while helping me into my dress, my bridesmaids laughing over mimosas, the quiet moment when I looked at myself in the mirror and realized I was actually getting married today. My dress was ivory lace with a chapel train, fitted bodice, sleeves that hit just below the shoulder. Simple, elegant, unmistakably bridal. I looked at my reflection and thought about Vanessa's comment. The plain one. I carried that phrase around for 2 weeks like a stone in my pocket. Rachel appeared behind me in the mirror. You look absolutely stunning. Like a vintage movie star. I look like myself. Exactly. And yourself is gorgeous. Vanessa can show up in a circus tent for all I care, no one's going to be looking at anyone but you. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion and sunlight. Marcus's eyes when he saw me walking down the aisle. The vows we'd written ourselves, promising partnership and adventure and home. The kiss that made everyone cheer. The walk back down the aisle as a married couple, grinning like idiots. I didn't see Vanessa during the ceremony. Later, I'd learned she'd arrived exactly on time, not early enough to mingle during the pre-ceremony reception, but not late enough to make an obvious entrance. She positioned herself toward the middle of the seating, clearly visible but not intrusive. The white dress was exactly as advertised. Floor-length silk, heavily beaded bodice, delicate cap sleeves. It was, by any objective measure, a beautiful gown. It was also unmistakably a bridal dress. I heard about the guest reactions secondhand. Gasps. Whispers. Rachel reported that my Aunt Margaret had audibly said, "Oh, absolutely not," when Vanessa walked past. One of Marcus's cousins apparently took a photo and posted it on social media with the caption, "When you show up to a wedding trying to be the bride, rolling eyes face emoji." But during the ceremony itself, I was focused on Marcus. On the promises we were making. On the future we were building. Vanessa could have shown up in a full replica of my dress, and I wouldn't have cared in those moments. The reception, though. That was where everything unfolded. The cocktail hour went smoothly. Guests mingled on the terrace, servers circulated with appetizers and drinks, a string quartet played acoustic covers of popular songs. I was introduced to distant relatives, hugged friends I hadn't seen in years, posed for what felt like hundreds of photos. Vanessa approached during a lull, her white dress catching the late afternoon sun. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to disturb my makeup. "Congratulations, Liv. You look lovely. Really pulled it together. Thank you for coming." "Of course. I wouldn't miss my baby sister's wedding." She glanced around the terrace, clearly waiting for someone to comment on her dress, to acknowledge her presence. When no one immediately did, her smile tightened slightly. "I'll catch up with you later." Me to find a drink. She headed toward the bar, and I watched Teresa intercept her path smoothly, guiding her toward a different area while apologizing about some fictional bottleneck. Vanessa ended up at a high-top table on the far side of the terrace, partially obscured by a decorative tree. The transition to the reception hall happened seamlessly. Teresa coordinated everything like a conductor leading an orchestra. Guests moved inside, found their seats, admired the centerpieces and the room's transformation. The DJ's voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're about to introduce your wedding party." The doors opened. Music swelled. Terrence's voice boomed with enthusiasm as each couple was introduced, bridesmaids with groomsmen, my parents, Marcus's parents. Each pair got their moment, their walk through the room, their applause. I was watching from the side entrance, waiting for our introduction. I could see Vanessa at her table near the back, standing like everyone else, but her expression had shifted. She clearly expected to be announced. To be recognized as someone important, someone central to the celebration. And now, for the first time as a married couple, please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Marcus and Olivia Bennett. The room erupted. We walked in holding hands, waving, laughing at the noise and enthusiasm. The song we'd chosen, an upbeat acoustic cover of "Can't Help Falling in Love," played at perfect volume. People were on their feet, phones out, capturing the moment. We made our way to the sweetheart table at the front of the room, and I caught a glimpse of Vanessa still standing at her table, looking uncertain. Someone near her was whispering, probably explaining that only the wedding party got announced. Her face flushed. Dinner service began. The first course appeared, a butternut squash soup with crispy sage. Servers moved efficiently through the room, and I was too caught up in conversation with Marcus and our tablemates to pay attention to anything else. Then I heard a small commotion. Not loud enough to disrupt the whole room, but enough that nearby tables turned to look. A server was profusely apologizing to someone. I craned my neck and saw Vanessa standing at her table, looking down at her dress in horror. A dark red stain spread across the white silk, from her hip down toward the hem. The server, a young woman with her hair in a neat bun, kept apologizing, holding an empty wine glass. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Someone bumped my tray as I was passing. Please, let me help you clean that up. We'll cover dry cleaning costs, absolutely." Vanessa's voice carried across the tables. "This dress cost over $2,000. You've ruined it." Patricia appeared as if summoned, calm and professional. I couldn't hear what she said, but she gestured toward the exit, clearly offering to help Vanessa find the restroom and address the stain. Vanessa followed her out, the white dress now decorated with an angry splash of Cabernet. Rachel leaned over from the next table. "Well, that happened fast. Is she okay?" "I mean, the dress isn't. But she'll survive. Though I have to say, red wine on white silk? That's going to be next to impossible to get out completely." Vanessa returned 10 minutes later. The stain was lighter but still visible, a pink-red shadow that couldn't be missed. She'd clearly been crying, her makeup was smudged, and her eyes were red. She sat down at her table and stared at her plate. The entree course arrived. I'd chosen herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables, and it was perfect. Guests at nearby tables were commenting on how delicious everything was. Marcus and I fed each other bites in the traditional way, laughing as my mother caught it on her phone. Another commotion. This time, it was on the opposite side of the room. I turned to see Vanessa standing again, this time with a brown stain spreading across her bodice. A server stood nearby with an empty cup, looking mortified. "Chai latte," Rachel reported, somehow having gotten details already. Someone carrying a tray of them got jostled near her table. Physics did the rest. Vanessa was crying openly now. Patricia appeared again, along with the server, both apologizing. Vanessa was shaking her head, saying something about how this couldn't be happening. The brown stain mixed with the red stain, creating a mess that no amount of spot cleaning could fix. This time, when she went to the restroom, my mother followed. They were gone for nearly 15 minutes. When they returned, Vanessa's face was blotchy, her eyes swollen. Mom caught my eye across the room and gave a small shrug that conveyed everything: sympathy for the situation, awareness of the choices that led to it, and a hint of I tried to warn her. The toasts began. Marcus's best man told a hilarious story about their college days. Rachel gave a beautiful speech about friendship and finding your person. My father spoke about watching me grow up, about how proud he was, about welcoming Marcus to the family. No one mentioned Vanessa or asked her to speak, because that's not traditional for siblings who aren't in the wedding party. First dance. Father-daughter dance. Mother-son dance. Each one perfect, each one captured by Jason's camera. During the father-daughter dance, I saw Vanessa standing at the edge of the dance floor, clearly hoping someone would ask her to dance or acknowledge her presence. But everyone's attention was on the traditional moments unfolding. The dancing opened up to everyone. Music filled the room: Motown, classic rock, current pop hits. People flooded the dance floor. Marcus and I danced with elderly relatives and college friends and everyone in between. The energy was incredible. I lost track of Vanessa for a while. Then I spotted her at her table, sitting alone while her tablemates danced. The white dress with its red and brown stains looked worse under the colored lights of the dance floor. She was scrolling through her phone. Later, I'd learn what she was seeing. Her social media, which she'd been posting to throughout the day, had exploded with comments. The photo she'd posted while getting ready, a full-length shot of herself in the white dress with a caption "Ready to celebrate my beautiful sister," had garnered hundreds of responses, most of them variations on "Did you really wear white to your sister's wedding? And this is so inappropriate." Someone at the wedding had posted photos. Vanessa at the ceremony in her white dress. Vanessa with a wine stain. Vanessa with both stains. The internet, in its infinite wisdom, had done what the internet does: judged loudly and publicly. Cake cutting happened without incident. The dessert table opened up, an elaborate spread of cupcakes, cookies, and a chocolate fountain. Marcus and I were talking to his grandmother when I heard Teresa's voice over the speakers. "Folks, we need to clear some space near the dessert table. Small spill. Nothing to worry about." I looked over. A large punch bowl of chai had apparently tipped over, creating a spreading puddle of beige liquid. And standing right at the edge of that puddle, having stepped back too late, was Vanessa. Her shoes, white satin heels that matched the dress, were soaked. The bottom 6 inches of her dress hem was saturated, dripping. She stood there for a long moment, staring at her ruined outfit, and then she started crying. Not the quiet tears from earlier, but full-body sobs. My mother and another aunt rushed over, trying to comfort her, but Vanessa was inconsolable. "I just wanted to look nice," she kept saying. "I just wanted to be pretty too. It's not fair. Nothing ever works out for me." I felt Marcus's hand on my arm. "Do you want to go talk to her?" "I don't think that's what she needs right now." Vanessa left 20 minutes later. My mother helped her to her car, still trying to console her. The white dress was comprehensively destroyed, red wine, chai tea, and more chai from the punch bowl incident. It looked like abstract art gone wrong. After they left, the party somehow got better. The energy shifted, became lighter. People danced harder, laughed louder. It was as if a weight had been lifted that no one had realized was there. Jason found me during a quiet moment. "Got all the family formals earlier. Your mom and dad, Marcus's parents, siblings, grandparents. Everyone who needed to be in them." "Vanessa?" She was never in the right position when we were shooting. Kept moving around, checking her phone. I called for her a few times, but she didn't seem to hear. "You were very clear about wanting efficient family photos so you could get to the reception, so we couldn't wait around." "Makes sense." "For what it's worth?" Jason lowered his voice. "In 15 years of wedding photography, I've shot exactly 6 weddings where a guest wore white. It never ends well for them. Not because of anything the bride does, but because other guests lose respect for them. They isolate themselves by making that choice." The reception wound down around midnight. Our last dance was to The Way You Look Tonight, swaying slowly while the few remaining guests watched from tables scattered with empty champagne flutes and wilted flowers. Marcus whispered something in my ear that made me laugh, and Jason captured it, that moment of pure joy and intimacy. Teresa found us as we were preparing to leave. Everything went smoothly. No major incidents, no drama, just a beautiful celebration. "Teresa, I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by being happy. That's all any couple should have to worry about on their wedding day." She paused, then added quietly, "Your sister left around 9:30. Your mother came back after getting her settled, said she'd probably be okay after a good night's sleep and some perspective. Do you think she'll figure out it was coordinated? I think she'll wonder. But she won't be able to prove anything, because nothing we did was provable. Accidents happen. Photographers focus on the couple. DJs follow the announcement list provided. These are all normal, professional practices." Teresa smiled. "Sometimes life just has a way of enforcing social norms." The honeymoon in Italy was blissful. We wandered through ancient ruins, ate incredible pasta, and existed in a bubble of newlywed happiness. My mother called on day 5. "You need to talk to your sister when you get back. She's convinced the entire wedding was sabotaged." "How so?" "She thinks the servers targeted her on purpose. That the photographer deliberately excluded her. That you orchestrated the whole thing to humiliate her." "What do you think?" A long pause. "I think your sister made a choice that was designed to hurt you. I think she spent her whole life making everything about her, and for once, she wasn't the center of attention. I think consequences happened, and now she's struggling to accept responsibility. Did you tell her that?" "In gentler words, yes. She's not speaking to me at the moment." Vanessa called while Marcus and I were having lunch in a cafe overlooking the Amalfi Coast. I debated not answering, but curiosity won. "Olivia." Her voice was flat, exhausted. "We need to talk. I'm on my honeymoon." "I know. This can't wait. What you did at the wedding was cruel. Orchestrating all those accidents, making sure I wasn't in any photos, excluding me from being announced. You deliberately humiliated me in front of the entire family." I took a sip of wine, looking out at the water. "Van, I don't know what you're talking about. Servers had accidents, which unfortunately happened near you. The photographer focused on me and Marcus because it was our wedding. The DJ announced the wedding party because that's traditional. None of that had anything to do with me. Don't lie to me. You coordinated it all. You and that wedding planner. You wanted revenge because I wore white. You chose to wear white to my wedding after I expressed concern. You called me plain. You made it clear you wanted to be seen as my equal at my own wedding. What happened after that? That was just a series of unfortunate events. I can't believe you're denying this. You're my sister." "Exactly. I'm your sister. And as your sister, I invited you to one of the most important days of my life. I gave you a place at the table, even after you made your intentions clear. What happened during the reception? That's between you and fate, Van. This isn't over. It is, though. Because here's the thing, even if you're right, even if everything was somehow coordinated, what are you going to do? Tell people that your sister arranged for consequences after you wore white to her wedding? Post about it on social media, where everyone's already calling you out. Take legal action over spilled drinks? Silence on the other end. Van, I love you. You're my sister, and that's never going to change. But you made a choice designed to hurt me on my wedding day. If that choice came with consequences, maybe spend some time thinking about why you made it in the first place. I hung up. Marcus raised his eyebrows. How do you feel? Free, actually. For the first time in our entire relationship, I'm not apologizing for existing in my own space. We got the wedding photos 3 weeks after returning from Italy. Jason had delivered a stunning collection: the ceremony, the reception, candid moments, formal portraits. Every important person was represented. Every significant moment captured. Vanessa wasn't in a single photo. There were shots where she was technically present, blurred in the background, half out of frame, turned away. But there were no clear photos of her, no formal family shots with her included, nothing she could frame or post or save. My mother looked through them during dinner at our new apartment. These are beautiful. Really beautiful. Though your sister is going to be upset. Why? She's not in any of them. Huh? That's strange. I wonder why. Mom gave me a long look over her reading glasses. Olivia Marie. I'm just saying, it's odd. Jason's usually so thorough. You're more like your father than I realized. Both of you so quiet, so patient. And then when pushed too far, both of you so absolutely, strategically unmovable. I didn't confirm or deny anything. Just smiled and poured more wine. The final piece of closure came 6 months later. Vanessa and I had maintained a cordial distance, family gatherings were polite but not warm, texts were practical rather than friendly. Then she called on a random Thursday evening. I've been thinking a lot about the wedding. About what I did. Okay. I was jealous. I've always been jealous of you, actually. You have this way of being content with who you are. You don't need constant validation. You just exist in your space without apology. I've spent my whole life performing, making sure people notice me, and you just get to be yourself. It made me angry. I sat down slowly. Van, I didn't know you felt that way. How could you? I never told you. I just kept competing with you in my head, kept trying to prove I was better, more successful, prettier. Wearing white to your wedding was supposed to be this statement about us being equal. But really, it was me trying to take something from you because I was jealous that you were happy. What made you realize this? Therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. Also, I tried to make a statement at my friend Jennifer's wedding last month, wore this attention-grabbing red dress during her outdoor ceremony. She didn't say anything. Just smiled and told me I looked nice. And the entire wedding went smoothly, no incidents, no drama. And it hit me that maybe what happened at your wedding wasn't some cosmic conspiracy. Maybe it was just people reacting to someone violating social norms. Maybe. Can we start over? Not forget everything, but actually build something real? I thought about the wedding. About the planning, the coordination, the satisfaction of watching consequences unfold. About the part of me that had enjoyed seeing Vanessa struggle with the results of her choices. Yeah. We can start over. But Van? From now on, we need to be honest with each other. No more competing. No more trying to take up space in each other's moments. Just two sisters figuring out how to be family. I'd like that. We didn't become best friends overnight. The relationship we built was quieter, more genuine. Less performance, more substance. And sometimes, when we're together at family gatherings, I catch her looking at me with something like respect. Marcus asked me once if I regretted how the wedding unfolded. We were lying in bed, nearly a year later, talking about starting to plan for kids. Do you wish you'd handled it differently? Been more direct, confronted her beforehand? I thought about it honestly. No. Because being direct wasn't going to change anything. Vanessa needed to make her choice and experience the consequences. And I needed to stop letting her take up space that wasn't hers. You think what we did was right? I think what we did was strategic. Whether it was right? That's a harder question. But I know that it protected our wedding day. It let us celebrate without drama. And maybe it taught Vanessa something she needed to learn. Which was that consequences exist. That you can't violate social contracts and expect everyone to just accommodate you. That sometimes the universe, or a really good wedding coordinator, enforces boundaries when people won't respect them. He pulled me closer. You're kind of terrifying when you're strategic. Only when pushed. I'm really quite reasonable otherwise. The truth is, I still don't know if what we did was completely ethical. The planning, the coordination, the careful orchestration of accidents and professional oversights. It lived in a gray area between justified consequences and calculated revenge. But I also know that I got married on a perfect autumn day, surrounded by people who loved us, without my sister's white dress becoming the center of attention. I know that every photo from that day shows Marcus and me happy, surrounded by the people who mattered most, celebrating love without drama. And I know that sometimes, when someone tries to take your spotlight, the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and maybe even for them, is to let them stand in their own light and discover it's not as warm as they thought it would be. The wedding was 3 years ago now. Marcus and I have a 1-year-old daughter, Emma, who's currently asleep upstairs. Vanessa is dating someone who seems genuinely good for her, someone who appreciates her without requiring constant performance. We have dinner together monthly, the four of us, and it's pleasant. She brought up the wedding once during one of these dinners, after her third glass of wine. You know, I never did get to see the professional photos from your wedding. Really? Mom has an album. She does. It's beautiful. I'm not in any of them. Huh? That is odd. She looked at me for a long moment, something like humor in her eyes. Olivia, was it coordinated? Marcus tensed slightly beside me. I took a sip of water, considering my answer carefully. Van, does it matter? You wore white to my wedding. Things happened that made you uncomfortable. We're here now, 3 years later, in a much better place. Does knowing whether it was cosmic irony or careful planning change anything? I guess not. Though for what it's worth? If it was planned, it was masterfully done. I couldn't prove anything. Everything had plausible deniability. Sounds exhausting to think about. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in our conversation. You're never going to tell me, are you? Tell you what? That I coordinated with multiple vendors to create a series of perfectly timed accidents that ruined your inappropriate white dress while maintaining complete professional deniability? That sounds like an elaborate conspiracy theory, Van. It really does. We moved on to other topics, her boyfriend's promotion, our nursery planning, Marcus's new project at work. Normal sibling conversation. Building something real. But as we left that night, walking to our car under streetlights, Marcus whispered, "You almost told her." Almost. But some things are more fun to leave mysterious. You're terrifying and I love you. I'm really not terrifying. I'm just someone who believes in consequences. There's a difference. Looking back now, with perspective and distance, I still believe we made the right choice. Vanessa needed to experience the natural result of her actions without the buffer of family obligation forcing everyone to pretend it was acceptable. The wedding needed to be about Marcus and me, not about managing someone else's need for attention. Were the accidents coordinated? Was the exclusion from photos deliberate? Did the DJ forget her announcement on purpose? I'll never confirm it. But I'll also never apologize for protecting my wedding day. For ensuring that the most important celebration of our lives remained focused on the commitment we were making, not on managing family drama. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means letting consequences teach lessons that words never could. And sometimes, just sometimes, it means having a really exceptional wedding coordinator who understands that professionalism means protecting the couple's vision above all else. The white dress is in Vanessa's closet somewhere, professionally cleaned but permanently stained. A reminder of choices and consequences. Of trying to steal light and discovering darkness instead. My wedding dress hangs in a preservation box in our guest room closet. Perfect, pristine, unstained. Exactly as it should be. And that, I think, says everything that needs to be said. 3 years after the wedding, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a leather-bound journal with a note from Vanessa. Liv, I've been working with my therapist on something called accountability journaling. This is a copy of some entries I think you should read. Not asking for anything. Just want you to understand where my head was. I opened it that evening after Marcus had gone to bed early. The first entry was dated 3 months after our wedding. Dr. Chen asked me today why I wore the white dress. I realized I didn't have a good answer. I said it was about equality. She pointed out that wearing white to someone's wedding doesn't make you equal to them, it makes you a person who wore white to someone's wedding. Later entries showed Vanessa unpacking years of jealousy and misplaced competition. Liv got praised for being responsible, steady, smart. I got praised for being pretty and charming. Liv got to be a person. I got to be decoration. And instead of being angry at mom and dad for that, I got angry at Liv for having substance. The final entry was dated 2 weeks before the package arrived. Dr. Chen asked if I'd forgiven Liv yet. Then she asked a different question: even if Liv did coordinate it all, was she wrong to protect her wedding day from someone who announced their intention to overshadow her? I couldn't say she was wrong. So she asked what I'm really angry about, the consequences of my actions, or the fact that for once, someone didn't let me get away with bad behavior? I closed the journal and sat quietly. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Did you get it? Got it. Read it. Thank you for sharing. Can I call you tomorrow? I'd like that. The next afternoon, Vanessa and I sat on my back porch while Emma played with blocks on a blanket. Your therapist sounds intense, I said. She's incredible. She doesn't let me get away with anything. Vanessa sipped her tea. 2 years of twice-weekly sessions. Best money I've ever spent. What made you start? The wedding photos online. Seeing myself as others saw me, desperate for attention in that white dress. I looked pathetic, Liv. And I couldn't blame anyone but myself. Emma held up a block triumphantly. We both smiled. Did you coordinate it? Vanessa asked. I need the truth. I thought about Teresa's planning. Jason's artistic vision. Patricia's awareness. Does it change anything if I did? Maybe not. But I need truth between us. I watched Emma stack blocks. Yes. I coordinated it. Not the accidents themselves. But I made sure everyone knew you'd be wearing white. I made sure the photographer understood his priorities and the catering staff was prepared for drama. And the accidents? Were accidents. But did I create an environment where they'd more likely happen near you? Probably. The photos? Jason was coordinating formals on a tight timeline. You kept checking your phone. He called for you, but you didn't hear. We couldn't wait. That's not quite the same as being deliberately excluded. No. But I didn't tell him to wait longer. I didn't insist you be included when you weren't in position. Emma knocked over her tower of blocks and laughed. Vanessa watched her for a moment, then turned back to me. I'm not angry. That's what I realized in therapy. I'm not angry that there were consequences. I'm angry that I needed consequences to learn what should have been obvious, that you don't try to upstage someone at their own wedding. That you don't hurt people you love just because you're jealous. That being pretty and charming doesn't give you permission to be cruel. You weren't cruel. You were thoughtless. I called you plain, Liv. To your face. 2 weeks before your wedding. That's not thoughtless, that's cruel. And it came from a place of wanting to hurt you because I was jealous that you were happy without needing to be the center of attention. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We both made choices that day. You chose to wear white. I chose to protect my wedding. Neither of us was completely right or completely wrong. But my choice hurt you first. And my response hurt you back. Maybe we're even. She laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. Dr. Chen would say that's not how healing works. That we don't balance hurt with hurt. But I appreciate the sentiment. Emma crawled over to the edge of the blanket, reaching for Vanessa's shoe. Vanessa picked her up carefully, settling her on her lap. Emma grabbed at her necklace, fascinated by the way it caught the light. She's beautiful, Vanessa said. She has your eyes but Marcus's smile. She has her own everything, I think. We're just the raw materials. Are you going to tell her about the wedding someday? About what happened with her aunt? Maybe. When she's old enough to understand complicated family dynamics and the consequences of social decisions. Not as a cautionary tale, but as an honest story about how people who love each other can still hurt each other. What would you say? I thought about it, watching my daughter explore Vanessa's face with tiny, curious fingers. I'd say that your aunt made a choice that was designed to hurt me because she was hurting. And I made choices that protected my special day but also made sure there were consequences for her behavior. And then we both had to decide whether we wanted to be right or whether we wanted to be family. And we chose family, but it took time and honesty and a lot of therapy. Vanessa wiped her eyes with her free hand. That's a good answer. I've had 3 years to think about it. Do you trust me now? Not performatively, but really? I considered the question honestly. I'm getting there. Trust isn't binary, it's not like a switch you flip. But every time you show up authentically, every time you're honest instead of charming, every time you let yourself be real instead of perfect, I trust you a little more. That's fair. She kissed the top of Emma's head gently. I want to be someone she can trust. Her aunt who tells her the truth instead of performing whatever will make her like me most. Then be that person. I'm trying. We sat there for a while longer, passing Emma back and forth, talking about lighter things, Vanessa's boyfriend proposing next month, our parents' upcoming anniversary trip, the new coffee shop downtown that made excellent pastries. Normal sister conversation, the kind we'd never really had before. As she was leaving, Vanessa paused at her car. Thank you. For what? For not letting me get away with it. For protecting your day. For giving me consequences when everyone else in my life had always just accommodated me. I didn't understand it then, but you gave me a gift. Van, I'm serious. If you just uninvited me, I would have played the victim. If you confronted me directly, I would have gotten defensive and made it about you being unreasonable. If you'd done nothing, I would have learned that I could violate social norms without consequences. But what you did? It let me make my choice and then live with the results. That's the only way I was ever going to learn. I walked down to her car, and we hugged properly for the first time in years. Not the performative air kiss greeting, but an actual embrace. We're okay? She asked. We're getting there. And that's better than we've ever been. After she drove away, I went back inside where Marcus was making dinner, Emma perched in her high chair watching him with fascination. How'd it go? He asked, stirring something that smelled amazing. Good. Really good, actually. She's doing the work. And how do you feel about all of it? The wedding, the aftermath, where you two are now. I picked Emma up and settled her on my hip, breathing in that perfect baby smell. I feel like we both needed to grow up. I needed to stop letting her walk all over me, and she needed to stop expecting everyone to accommodate her bad behavior. The wedding was painful, but maybe it was necessary. Do you regret the coordination? The strategic responses? Sometimes. Late at night when I'm overthinking everything. But mostly? No. Because I got to have a beautiful wedding day focused on us. And Vanessa got a wake-up call that changed her life trajectory. Those both feel like outcomes worth having. Even though she cried and left early? Even though. Sometimes short-term pain prevents long-term dysfunction. She could have spent the rest of her life believing she could manipulate situations without consequences. Now she's in therapy, doing real work, becoming someone more substantial than just the pretty, charming sister. Marcus turned off the stove and came over, wrapping his arms around both me and Emma. You know what I love about you? You're kind, but you're not a pushover. You give people chances, but not unlimited chances. You protect what matters. Is that your way of saying I'm strategic? It's my way of saying you're strong. There's a difference. That night, after Emma was asleep and we were getting ready for bed, I pulled out my phone and looked at the wedding photos one more time. Marcus and me under the arbor, hands clasped, faces glowing. Our first dance, his arms around me like I was precious. Cutting the cake, laughing at something someone had said. Surrounded by family and friends, all of them smiling, all of them present. Not a single photo included Vanessa in any meaningful way. And looking at them now, years later, I felt no guilt about that. Just peace. The wedding was ours. The photos tell our story. And sometimes, protecting what matters most means making difficult choices that others might not understand. I put the phone away and climbed into bed beside Marcus, who pulled me close. What were you looking at? He asked sleepily. Just remembering. Good memories? The best ones, I said. And I meant it.
Story 3.
My sister showed up at my door unannounced with her husband and 5 children, suitcases in hand, announcing they'd been evicted again. When I offered my spare room temporarily, she looked around, smirked, and said, "Actually, we'll need your daughter's room too. She can sleep on the couch or on the street." When I refused to displace my 12-year-old in her own home, my sister exploded, saying, "Mom agrees with me, family helps family." I just smiled and said nothing. That was 2 days ago. Yesterday, my mother called in a panic because my sister's family was now completely homeless after I did this. The doorbell rang at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Through the peephole, I saw my sister Vanessa standing on my porch with her husband Derek and their 5 children ranging from 3 to 14 years old. Suitcases surrounded them like a fortress of poor decisions. I opened the door. "We need to stay here," Vanessa announced before I could say hello. No greeting, no apology for showing up unannounced. Just a demand wrapped in desperation. "What happened?" I asked, though I already knew. This was the third eviction in 2 years. "The landlord was unreasonable," Derek muttered, not meeting my eyes. He never did when he was lying. Their oldest, Madison, looked at me with an expression far too mature for 14. She'd seen this script before. The younger ones, Aiden, Brooklyn, Connor, and little Haley, fidgeted with the exhaustion of children who'd been uprooted too many times. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My daughter Zoe appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Aunt Vanessa?" Zoe's confusion was understandable. We hadn't seen them in 8 months, not since Vanessa had borrowed $300 for emergency car repairs that never materialized into an actual fixed vehicle. "Hey, sweetheart," Vanessa said with forced cheerfulness. "We're going to be staying here for a little while." I caught the presumption in her words but said nothing yet. Zoe descended the stairs slowly, sensing the tension the way 12-year-olds always do. "You can use the spare room," I offered, gesturing toward the small guest bedroom off the living room. "It's not much, but there's a queen bed and—" "Actually," Vanessa interrupted, walking past me into my house as if she owned it, "we'll need Zoe's room too. 7 people can't fit in one room, Melody. Be realistic." The air shifted. Zoe froze on the bottom step. "Excuse me?" I kept my voice level. "Your daughter can sleep on the couch. Or honestly, with all that space in the basement, she could set up down there. It's only temporary." Vanessa shrugged as if she were suggesting a minor furniture rearrangement rather than displacing my child in her own home. "Zoe's not sleeping on the couch or in the basement. This is her house." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I see. Your princess is too good to make a small sacrifice for family?" Derek cleared his throat uncomfortably but said nothing. He never did. Madison looked mortified. "The spare room is available," I repeated. "That's what I can offer." "That's not good enough," Vanessa snapped. Her voice rose an octave, and the younger children instinctively moved closer to each other. "We have 5 kids, Melody. 5. You have one spoiled brat who probably doesn't even appreciate what she has." Zoe's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. I was proud of her for that. "Don't talk about my daughter that way," I said quietly. The kind of quiet that's more dangerous than shouting. "I'll talk however I want. Mom agrees with me, by the way. Family helps family. That's what she always taught us, or did you forget?" Vanessa pulled out her phone triumphantly. "I called her before we came here. She said you'd better step up and do the right thing." Something clicked into place in my mind. This wasn't spontaneous. They'd planned this. Vanessa had orchestrated this entire ambush with our mother's blessing, probably banking on guilt and family obligation to steamroll my boundaries. I smiled then. Not a warm smile. Not even an angry smile. Just a small, knowing curve of my lips that made Vanessa's confidence falter for half a second. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" Vanessa repeated suspiciously. "The spare room is yours if you need it. But Zoe keeps her room. Those are the terms. Take them or leave them." Vanessa's face flushed red. "You're unbelievable. After everything Mom and I did for you growing up, you're going to choose your bratty kid over your own sister's children who are about to be sleeping on the street? You made your choice when you walked through that door and insulted my daughter," I replied. "The offer stands. Spare room only." Derek finally spoke up, his voice weak. "Maybe we should just take it, Ness. It's better than nothing." "Shut up," Vanessa hissed at him. She turned back to me, her expression twisting into something ugly. "You're selfish. You've always been selfish. Mom's going to hear about this." "I'm sure she will." Vanessa grabbed Madison's arm roughly. "Come on. We're leaving. We'll find someone who actually cares about family." They filed out, suitcases dragging across my porch. Little Haley looked back at me with wide eyes before Derek scooped her up. The door closed behind them, and I locked it. Zoe stood frozen by the stairs. "Mom?" "You're safe," I told her. "Your room is yours. Always." She hugged me then, fierce and tight. We stood there for a long moment before I sent her back to bed. She'd have school in the morning, and I wanted at least one of us to sleep that night. I knew what was coming. The phone calls. The guilt trips. The family intervention where I'd be painted as the villain who let children suffer. I'd been through this dance before with Vanessa, just never at quite this scale. But I'd prepared for this. Not this exact scenario, but something close enough. I'd learned the hard way that enabling Vanessa only made things worse. Every loan that never got repaid. Every crisis that was somehow always someone else's fault. Every time Mom swooped in to smooth things over and demand I be more understanding. My phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. I turned my phone off and went to bed. The next morning, I drove Zoe to school and then headed to work at the accounting firm where I'd been employed for 9 years. My life was ordinary in the best possible way. Stable job, modest house, daughter thriving in school. I'd built it carefully, brick by brick, after my divorce from Zoe's father 5 years ago. My phone had 17 missed calls when I turned it back on during my lunch break. 12 from Mom, 3 from Vanessa, 2 from my Aunt Patricia. I called Mom back. Finally. She answered. Melody and Richardson, what on earth were you thinking? My full name. The nuclear option of maternal disappointment. I offered Vanessa the spare room. She demanded Zoe's room instead and called my daughter a brat. I stood my ground. She has 5 children sleeping in their car right now. Do you understand that? Your nieces and nephews are homeless because of you. They're homeless because Vanessa and Derek got evicted again. That's not my responsibility. How can you be so cold? This is your sister. Your blood. I'd heard this speech before. Blood was supposed to trump everything: common sense, healthy boundaries, self-preservation. Blood meant unlimited chances and unconditional enabling. Where are they now? I asked. I don't know. Vanessa won't tell me. She's too humiliated. She knows her own sister abandoned her. Did she mention that she insulted Zoe and demanded she sleep on the couch in her own home? Zoe can handle one night on the couch. She's young. Kids are resilient. Vanessa's children are going through a trauma that could scar them forever. Whose fault is that? Mom's voice dropped to ice. I thought I raised you better than this. You raised me to believe family meant something. But you also taught me, accidentally, I think, that some people will take everything you give and still demand more. Vanessa is 34 years old. She's made her choices. She's struggling. Derek lost his job, and Derek's lost 6 jobs in 3 years. Maybe the problem isn't the jobs. Silence stretched between us. I could hear Mom's breathing, sharp and angry. If something happens to those children, it's on your conscience, she finally said. No, Mom. It's on theirs. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking slightly. Standing up to Mom never got easier. She had a way of making you feel 6 years old again, small and wrong and desperate for approval. But I wasn't 6 anymore. I was 32 with a daughter depending on me to model what healthy boundaries looked like. I went back to work. That evening, I picked up Zoe from school. She was quiet in the car. Everyone okay today? I asked. Yeah. She paused. Is Aunt Vanessa mad at us? Aunt Vanessa is mad at herself, even if she doesn't know it yet. Her kids seem sad. I know, sweetheart. That's hard to see. Could they really not fit in the spare room? I glanced at her. They could have made it work. People have survived worse. But your aunt wanted me to give up your room, and when I said no, she chose to leave. Why would she want my room? Because she thought I'd give in if she pushed hard enough. Some people test boundaries to see if they'll hold. Zoe considered this. Did they hold? What do you think? A small smile. Yeah. They held. We stopped for groceries on the way home. Normal life continued, which somehow felt like an act of rebellion. My phone rang again that night. Aunt Patricia this time. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Melody, I'm calling because your mother is beside herself, Patricia said without preamble. I know Vanessa can be difficult, but those children need help. I agree. They need parents who make better decisions. That's not fair. You don't know what they're going through. I know they've been evicted 3 times. I know Derek can't keep a job. I know Vanessa borrowed money from me 6 times last year and hasn't repaid a cent. I know she showed up at my house demanding I displace my daughter and threw a tantrum when I said no. What else should I know? Patricia sighed. You sound just like your father. My father, who died when I was 16, had been the practical one. The one who said no when needed. Mom had never forgiven him for that quality, even after he was gone. Thank you, I said. It wasn't a compliment. I know. She hung up too. I made dinner. Helped Zoe with her math homework. We watched a cooking show together, and I tucked her into her own bed, in her own room, where she belonged. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Madison. Aunt Melody, we're okay. We're staying at a motel. Mom's mad but we're safe. I'm sorry she said those things about Zoe. My throat tightened. Madison was 14 and already apologizing for her mother's behavior. I'd been there at 14, smoothing over Vanessa's explosions, explaining away her selfishness. Thank you for letting me know, I texted back. You're a good kid. This isn't your fault. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. I hoped she believed me. Wednesday passed. Then Thursday. My phone stopped ringing as frequently. Mom left one final voicemail telling me I was dead to her until I apologized to Vanessa and made things right. I saved the voicemail. Not sure why. Maybe as evidence that I wasn't imagining the emotional manipulation. Friday afternoon, my coworker Janet asked if I was okay. Apparently, I'd been quieter than usual. Family stuff, I said. She nodded knowingly. The kind that makes you question if you're the problem? Exactly that kind. If you have to question it, you're probably not the problem. Simple wisdom. I appreciated it. That evening, Zoe had a friend over for a sleepover. They giggled in her room, doing whatever 12-year-olds do. The sound filled the house with lightness I hadn't realized was missing. Around 9 p.m., while I was loading the dishwasher, someone knocked on my door. Not the doorbell, actual knocking, urgent and loud. Through the peephole, I saw Derek. Alone. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Where's Vanessa? At the motel with the kids. Can I talk to you? He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders hunched like the weight of the world was crushing him. You have 5 minutes. He didn't argue about not being invited inside. I need your help. Not for us, I know you won't help us. But I need to borrow your truck tomorrow. I found day labor work, but it's across town and our car finally died. If I can get there and work, I can pay for another night at the motel. How did you find this work? Guy at the gas station told me his brother's company needs people for a moving job. Cash payment at the end of the day. I know it's not much, but it's something. I studied his face. He looked sincere, which meant nothing. Derek always looked sincere. Why isn't Vanessa here asking? She doesn't know I'm here. She'd kill me if she found out. Why come at all then? His jaw worked for a moment. Because Madison asked me to. She said you were the only one who might help without conditions. Madison. 14-year-old Madison who was too wise for her age. What time do you need the truck? Relief flooded his features. Really? I mean, 6 a.m.? The job starts at 7, and keys will be in the visor. Tank's full. Return it by 8 p.m., or I report it stolen. I will. I swear. Melody, thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you or Vanessa. I'm doing it for your kids who deserve parents who actually try. His face flushed, but he nodded. Fair enough. One more thing. How much does the motel cost per night? $65. Why? Just curious. Be here at 6. He left, and I locked the door behind him. Zoe appeared in the hallway, having heard everything. That was nice of you, she said. Lending someone a truck isn't nice. It's neutral. Still counts. I smiled at her. Go back to your friend. I'll bring up snacks in a minute. She bounded away, and I pulled out my phone. I'd been raised to believe family helped family. Mom had drilled that into me from childhood. But she'd also inadvertently taught me something else by always cleaning up Vanessa's messes, that helping and enabling were two entirely different things. Vanessa didn't need another rescue. She needed consequences. But her kids needed a safety net. I opened my laptop and started researching. Saturday morning at 5:55 a.m., Derek knocked softly on my door. I handed him the keys without a word. He was gone by 6. The truck returned at 7:30 p.m. Derek looked exhausted but less defeated. He handed me the keys. Made $200. Enough for 3 more nights and some groceries. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We need to talk. His guard went up immediately. About what? About your kids and what happens next. Not tonight, you're tired. But soon. He nodded slowly and left. Sunday morning, my phone rang. Mom's number. I debated not answering, but something made me pick up. Melody. Her voice was cold. I'm calling to inform you that I'll be driving down there tomorrow to pick up Vanessa and the children. They'll stay with me until they get back on their feet. Mom lived in a one-bedroom apartment 3 hours away. She was 68 and on a fixed income. That's not sustainable. It's what family does. It's what enablers do. She sucked in a breath. How dare you? How many times have you bailed Vanessa out? How many evictions? How many lost jobs? How many borrowed dollars never repaid? At what point do you admit that rescuing her over and over isn't helping her? She's my daughter. What would you have me do? Let her suffer? Yes, I said quietly. Let her experience the natural consequences of her choices. Otherwise, she'll never learn. You've become cruel. I've become a mother who understands that protecting your child from failure isn't love. It's fear disguised as love. Silence. Then, they're coming to stay with me. I won't let them be homeless. Okay. Okay? She sounded surprised. You're an adult. You can make your own choices. But Mom? When this doesn't work, and it won't, don't call me for money. I would never. You would. You have. 3 times in the last year alone. She hung up. I felt oddly calm. The conversation I'd been avoiding for years had finally happened, and the sky hadn't fallen. Monday morning, I called in a personal day at work. Zoe was at school. The house was quiet. I pulled up the research I'd compiled over the weekend. Phone numbers, addresses, websites. Information on housing assistance programs, food banks, employment resources, parenting classes, financial counseling. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called Vanessa. She answered on the 3rd ring. What do you want? To talk. Just you and me. No Derek, no Mom, no kids. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen. Meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street in an hour. Why would I do that? Because I have information that might actually help your family instead of just putting a band-aid on the situation. If this is some kind of lecture, it's not. 1 hour. I'll buy your coffee. I hung up before she could refuse. She showed up at 11:03 a.m., 3 minutes late. Power move. She'd always been like that. I'd already ordered her a vanilla latte, her favorite. She eyed it suspiciously before sitting down. Talk, she said. I slid a folder across the table. That's a list of every resource available in this county for families in crisis. Housing assistance applications, emergency rent programs, food assistance, employment training, childcare subsidies. Everything you need to actually stabilize instead of lurching from crisis to crisis. She didn't open the folder. You called me here to give me a list of handouts? I called you here to offer you a different kind of help. Not money. Not a place to stay. Information and support in using it. I don't need charity. You need something. 3 evictions in 2 years, Vanessa. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. Her eyes flashed. You don't know what it's like. You have your perfect little life with your perfect little daughter in your perfect little house. Some of us aren't so lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it. I made different choices. Oh, here we go. The responsible sister lecture. No lecture. Just facts. I finished college while pregnant. I worked 2 jobs after my divorce. I lived in an apartment smaller than your motel room for 3 years while I saved for a down payment. I made a budget and stuck to it. I said no to things I wanted so I could afford things I needed. None of that was luck. Must be nice to be so perfect. I took a sip of my coffee and let that comment hang in the air for a moment. I'm not perfect. But I am intentional. Every decision I make, I think about Zoe first. What will this teach her? What example does this set? What future am I building for her? Vanessa's jaw tightened. So you're saying I'm a terrible mother? I'm saying you're a mother who's struggling and refusing help that might actually change things. You keep waiting for someone to rescue you, and when they don't do it exactly the way you want, you get angry instead of adapting. I came to you for help. You came to me with demands. There's a difference. She pushed the folder back toward me. I don't want this. I know. You want someone to fix everything for you while you make no changes. That's not help. That's enabling. Is that what Mom does? Enables me? Yes. The bluntness seemed to shock her. She blinked several times. Mom called you, I continued. Said she's picking you up today to take you to her apartment. You know that's not sustainable. Her place is tiny. She's on a fixed income. In a month, maybe two, you'll be in the same situation again. At least she cares. I care. I care enough to tell you the truth instead of what you want to hear. You and Derek need to make real changes, or your kids are going to pay the price. Derek's trying. He got day labor work on Saturday. 1 day of work in 6 months. That's not trying. That's existing. Vanessa stood abruptly. I'm done listening to this. Okay. The folder's here if you change your mind. She walked out, leaving her untouched latte behind. I sat there for a while, watching people come and go. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the small drama playing out at the corner table. My phone buzzed. Text from Derek. Vanessa's upset. What did you say to her? The truth. How's the job search going? Got another day labor gig lined up for Wednesday. It's something. It's a start. Keep going. 3 dots appeared, then, thanks for lending me the truck. Made a difference. I didn't reply. That evening, Mom called again. I have them. We're back at my place. It's crowded, but we're managing. How long can you manage? As long as necessary. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Goodbye, Melody. The next 2 weeks passed in relative quiet. Zoe settled into a school project on marine biology. Work kept me busy with quarterly reports. Life returned to its normal rhythm. Then, on a Thursday evening, Madison called me. Aunt Melody? Can I talk to you? Of course. What's going on? We're still at Grandma's. It's really crowded. Mom and Grandma fight every day. Dad got another job, but it's only part-time. Brooklyn's failing school because we had to switch districts. Connor cries every night. Haley keeps asking when we get to go home, but we don't have a home. My heart ached for her. 14 was too young to carry this weight. I'm sorry you're going through this, Madison. Mom threw away that folder you gave her. I saw it in the trash at Grandma's house. But I pulled it out and hid it. Can you send me that information? Like, digitally? You want the resource list? Yeah. I'm going to help Dad apply for stuff. Mom won't, but someone has to. Dad says okay. Madison, that's very mature of you, but this shouldn't be your responsibility. I know. But if I don't do it, no one will. Grandma's too old. Dad's too overwhelmed. Mom's too proud. So it's me or nobody. Okay. I'll email everything to you. But Madison? Don't sacrifice yourself trying to save everyone else. You deserve to be a kid. I'll try. Her voice wavered. Did you really tell Mom she needed to experience consequences? I did. Good. She does. We all do. I'm tired of moving. We talked for another 10 minutes. I sent her the information with detailed instructions on how to navigate each application. She thanked me 3 times before hanging up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Madison, about those 5 kids caught in their parents' dysfunction. About Mom, trying to fix something she couldn't fix by sacrificing her own stability. About Vanessa, so wrapped up in pride and victimhood that she couldn't see the damage she was causing. About my role in all of it. I'd drawn boundaries. Good, healthy boundaries. But was there something more I could do without enabling? Friday morning, I called Derek. I have a proposition, I said. What kind of proposition? I'll pay for you to take a 2-week intensive course for electrical work. It's a trade certification program. Costs $800. Classes are 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Monday through Friday. You'd need to arrange childcare, and you'd need to complete every single class. At the end, you get a certificate that will help you find stable work. Silence stretched out. Why would you do that? He finally asked. Because Madison called me. Because those kids need at least one parent to step up. Because I'd rather invest in something with a future than keep watching you all circle the drain. Vanessa will be furious if I accept. Probably. Do you care more about her pride or your children's stability? More silence. I'll do it, he said quietly. When does it start? Monday. I'll send you the details. Melody? Thank you. Really. Don't thank me. Just finish the course and use the certification. I registered him that afternoon. $800 that might be completely wasted, but might also be the difference between those kids having a future or not. The weekend came. Zoe had a sleepover at a friend's house Saturday night. I cleaned the gutters, meal prepped for the week, finished a book I'd been reading. Sunday evening, my phone rang. "Mom. I can't do this anymore," she said without preamble. Her voice was ragged, exhausted. "Can't do what?" "Have them here. Melody, I love your sister, but I'm too old for this. There's no space. The kids are everywhere. Vanessa and I fight constantly. Derek barely helps. I'm at my breaking point. What do you want me to do about it? I need you to take them. Please. I know you said no before, but I'm begging you." "Nothing's changed, Mom. I offered the spare room." Vanessa demanded more. "The answer is still no to anything beyond the spare room. Can't Zoe just sleep on the couch for a while? It's temporary." "No. Melody, please. I'm exhausted. My blood pressure is through the roof. My doctor said the stress is dangerous at my age." "Then they need to leave your house." "Where will they go?" "That's Vanessa and Derek's problem to solve. You taking them in didn't fix anything. It just delayed the inevitable while making you sick." She started crying. Real, broken sobs. "I don't know what to do. I'm her mother. I can't just abandon her." "You're not abandoning her by refusing to enable her. You're forcing her to finally face reality. What if something happens to the kids? Then Derek and Vanessa will be responsible, not you. Not me. Them." "That's so cold." "It's honest. Mom, you can't save Vanessa. Only she can save herself. All you can do is decide how much of your own well-being you're willing to sacrifice for someone who isn't trying to change." More crying. "I just wanted to help." "I know. But help doesn't mean taking over their lives. Sometimes it means stepping back and letting them fall so they have to learn to stand up on their own." We talked for another hour. By the end, she was calmer. She didn't agree with me, but she was listening. "I'm giving them until the end of the month," she finally said. "Then they need to find somewhere else." "That's reasonable." "Is it? I feel like the worst mother in the world." "You're not. You're just tired of being used." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my house. Zoe was still at her friend's place. The silence was profound. My phone buzzed. Text from Madison. "Dad got accepted into that program you told him about. He starts Monday. Thank you." "You're welcome. How are you?" "Tired. But hopeful? Is that weird?" "Not weird at all. Hope is good." "Aunt Melody? Do you think we'll be okay?" I stared at that question for a long time before answering. "I think you're stronger than you know. And I think your dad is finally trying. That's a start." "What about Mom?" "I don't know, honey. That's up to her." Monday morning, Derek started the electrical certification course. He texted me a picture of himself in the classroom, looking nervous but determined. Vanessa found out by Tuesday. She called me screaming. "How dare you go behind my back? How dare you try to fix my husband like he's some kind of project? We don't need your charity. Derek needs job skills. The kids need stability. This isn't charity, it's an investment." "In what?" "Making Derek feel like a failure by implying he needs to be fixed. In giving him tools to provide for his family. If you can't see the difference, that's on you. I want you to stop. Cancel the course. Get your money back." "No." "Excuse me?" Derek agreed to this. He's an adult who can make his own decisions. If you have a problem with it, take it up with him. He wouldn't have done this without you manipulating him. I offered an opportunity. He took it. That's called personal agency." She made a strangled sound of rage and hung up. Wednesday, Derek missed me another update, day 3. Learning a lot. Hard but good. Thursday, Madison texted, "Mom's mad at everyone but Dad actually seems happier? This is weird." Friday evening, as I was making dinner with Zoe, someone knocked on my door. Vanessa stood there. Alone. Looking deflated. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table while Zoe disappeared upstairs to give us privacy. "I'm angry at you," Vanessa started. "I know. But Madison showed me all the stuff you sent her. The housing applications, the job resources, the assistance programs. She's been filling them out with Derek. They've applied for emergency rent assistance. They found a potential apartment that's income-based. Derek's halfway through that course, and he already has an interview lined up with an electrical company for when he finishes. That's good news. It is. She looked at her hands. Madison also told me what you said to her. About consequences. About enabling. About me needing to step up. I waited. My 14-year-old daughter is handling our crisis better than I am, Vanessa said quietly. She's the one filling out paperwork. She's the one encouraging her father. She's the one keeping her siblings calm. While I've been angry at everyone who won't fix this for me. Vanessa, no, let me finish. You were right. At the coffee shop. About all of it. I've been waiting for someone to rescue me. Mom, you, Derek, anyone. And every time someone doesn't do it exactly how I want, I blow up. But none of you made us get evicted 3 times. None of you made Derek lose all those jobs. None of you created this mess. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm a terrible mother. My kids deserve better. You're not a terrible mother. You're a struggling mother who's been making poor choices. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because terrible mothers don't sit here crying and admitting they've messed up. Terrible mothers blame everyone else and never change. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. I don't know how to fix this. You start by accepting help without demanding it be on your terms. You start by supporting Derek instead of undermining him. You start by applying for those programs Madison found instead of being too proud. You start by making a budget and sticking to it. You start by making different choices. What if I can't? Then your kids will suffer, and eventually, they'll resent you for it. Madison already sees everything clearly. How long before the others do too? She flinched but didn't argue. I'm scared, she whispered. That's human. Being scared doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it explains it. I'm sorry. For showing up and demanding Zoe's room. For calling her names. For all of it. Tell Zoe that, not me. Vanessa nodded. Can I? I called Zoe downstairs. She appeared cautiously, staying close to me. Zoe, I'm sorry, Vanessa said, looking at my daughter directly. I said mean things about you, and I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry. Zoe looked at me, and I nodded. Okay, Zoe said quietly. Thank you for apologizing. You're a good kid. You're lucky to have a mom like yours. I know. Simple, honest, confident. I'd never been prouder. Vanessa left shortly after. No demands this time. No explosions. Just a broken woman trying to figure out how to be better. The next 3 weeks unfolded like dominoes falling in slow motion. Derek finished the electrical certification course. He aced the final exam. The company that interviewed him offered him a full-time position starting at $18 an hour with benefits. Not a fortune, but stable. Madison and Derek's applications for emergency housing assistance came through. They were approved for a subsidized apartment, 2 bedrooms, not fancy, but clean and safe. Mom called to tell me she'd talked to Vanessa. Really talked. They both cried. They both apologized. The family was leaving her apartment that weekend. You were right, Mom admitted. I couldn't see it before, but you were right about the enabling. I thought I was helping, but I was just postponing the inevitable. It's hard to see clearly when you're in it. Will you forgive me? For the things I said? Already forgiven. Will you forgive yourself? She laughed shakily. Working on it. On a Saturday morning in early November, I helped Derek and Vanessa move into their new apartment. Zoe came with me. Madison and I assembled furniture while Derek and Vanessa unpacked boxes. The younger kids ran around exploring their new space. It wasn't much. Thrift store furniture, donated dishes, hand-me-down clothes. But it was theirs, paid for with Derek's first paycheck and assistance programs they'd swallowed their pride to accept. Thank you, Vanessa said as we were leaving. For not giving up on us even when I gave up on myself. I didn't do anything except refuse to enable you. You did the hard work. Still. Thank you. In the car on the way home, Zoe asked, are they going to be okay? I don't know. Maybe. They're trying, which is more than they were doing before. Why didn't Aunt Vanessa try before? Because trying is hard and scary. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they're willing to do hard, scary things. Is that what happened? They hit rock bottom? Something like that. Good, Zoe said firmly. Maybe now they'll build something better. Out of the mouths of 12-year-olds. A month later, Mom called with an update. Derek was doing well at his job. Vanessa had found part-time work at a grocery store. The kids were enrolled in school and adjusting. Madison made the honor roll. They're going to make it, Mom said, sounding surprised and relieved. Maybe, I replied. Time will tell. You know what the funny thing is? Vanessa told me that she was angrier at you than she'd ever been at anyone. But you were also the only one who told her the truth. She said everyone else loved her enough to lie, but you loved her enough to be honest. I'm not sure she's right about that. I am. Thank you for being stronger than I was. You found your strength eventually. That's what matters. We hung up, and I went about my evening. Dinner with Zoe. Homework supervision. Bedtime routine. Ordinary life. The life I'd built by making choices that prioritized stability over drama, boundaries over enabling, truth over comfort. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always popular. But it was mine, and I'd protected it. 2 months after that initial knock on my door, I was putting up Christmas decorations when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw all 7 of them, Derek, Vanessa, and the 5 kids. I opened the door. We brought cookies, little Haley announced, holding up a plate wrapped in festive cellophane. And we wanted to say thank you, Madison added. For everything. We're doing good, Vanessa said. Her voice was different. Softer. More genuine. Really good. Derek got a raise. I'm working full-time now. We're saving money. The kids are doing great in school. We're even thinking about getting a Christmas tree this year. Nothing fancy, but ours. That's wonderful. Can we come in? Derek asked. Just for a few minutes? We won't stay long. I stepped aside, and they filed in. The kids scattered, looking at decorations, marveling at my tree. Zoe appeared and was immediately swept up by her cousins. Vanessa and I stood in the kitchen while Derek wrangled the little ones. I'm sorry, she said again. For the 100th time. For everything. You already apologized. You don't have to keep doing it. I want to. Because I finally understand what you did. You didn't abandon me. You gave me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me, the opportunity to save myself. Everyone else kept rescuing me, which meant I never had to change. You refused to rescue me, and it forced me to finally become the person I should have been all along. You were always that person. You just needed a reason to find her. Madison wants to be like you when she grows up. Did you know that? She told me yesterday. She said you're strong and smart and you don't let people push you around. Madison is already like me. She's stronger than either of us were at 14. She really is. Vanessa's eyes watered. I want to be the kind of mother she deserves. I'm trying. I can see that. They didn't stay long. 30 minutes, maybe. Long enough for the kids to enjoy some hot chocolate and cookies. Long enough for Derek to shake my hand and say, I won't forget what you did for me. That course changed my life. Long enough for Vanessa to hug me and whisper, thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. After they left, Zoe and I cleaned up the kitchen together. They seem happier, she observed. They are. Because you didn't give Aunt Vanessa my room? I smiled. Because I held a boundary. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable them. Because love isn't about making people comfortable, it's about helping them grow. That's really deep, Mom. I have my moments. She hugged me then, spontaneous and tight. I'm glad you're my mom. I'm glad you're my daughter. Later that night, after Zoe was asleep, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and looked at my Christmas tree. The lights twinkled softly in the darkness. My phone buzzed. Text from Madison. Thank you for everything, Aunt Melody. I mean it. You saved my family by refusing to save them. That makes sense, right? Perfect sense, I texted back. I'm proud of you. Proud of you too. I smiled and set my phone down. Outside, the December night was quiet and still. Fresh snow from earlier in the week still covered the ground, pristine and untouched in my backyard. Inside, my daughter slept safely in her own room, in her own home, learning through example what it meant to love with boundaries. And somewhere across town, my sister was probably tucking her own children into their own beds, in their own home, finally understanding that the hardest gift anyone had ever given her was the space to figure out her own life. I sipped my tea and let the warmth spread through me. The week since that Tuesday night in October had been difficult. The phone calls, the accusations, the guilt trips. But we'd all survived. More than that, we'd all grown. Sometimes being the villain in someone else's story is the most heroic thing you can do. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. Christmas morning arrived bright and cold. Zoe tore through her presents with the enthusiasm only a 12-year-old could muster. We video called her father, who lived 2 states away with his new wife. Normal, amicable, the way post-divorce co-parenting should be when both people prioritize the child. Around noon, my phone rang. "Vanessa?" "Merry Christmas," she said, and I could hear the chaos of 5 children in the background. "Merry Christmas to you too. How's the morning going?" "Loud. Messy. Perfect." She paused. "Listen, I wanted to tell you something. Derek and I talked last night after the kids went to bed. We're starting therapy. Couples therapy and family therapy. We found a place that works on a sliding scale based on income. That's a big step. It's a necessary step. We realize that even though things are better financially, we still have patterns we need to break. Madison suggested it, actually. She's been reading about family dynamics in her psychology class. Can you believe that? My 14-year-old suggested therapy. She's remarkable. She gets that from you, I think. The clear-eyed way of seeing things. The refusal to pretend everything's fine when it's not. Vanessa's voice grew quieter. I spent so many years pretending. Pretending Derek's job losses weren't a pattern. Pretending the evictions were always someone else's fault. Pretending that if I just found the right person to help us, everything would magically work out. What changed? You stopped pretending with me. Everyone else in my life let me live in my delusions because it was easier than confronting me. You didn't. You held up a mirror, and I hated what I saw. But I needed to see it. We talked for another 20 minutes. She told me about Connor's progress in reading, about Brooklyn's newfound love of soccer, about how Aiden was finally sleeping through the night in his own bed. Small victories that added up to a life being rebuilt. After we hung up, I found Zoe in her room, already playing with her new art supplies. Aunt Vanessa called, I told her. They're doing really well. Good. Madison texted me this morning. She sent me a picture of their Christmas tree. It's small, but it's pretty. Did she seem happy? Yeah. She said this is the first Christmas she can remember where she's not worried about what comes next. Where she can just enjoy the day. That statement sat with me for the rest of the afternoon. A 14-year-old girl who could finally experience Christmas without the weight of her family's dysfunction crushing her joy. That was worth every difficult conversation, every boundary held, every moment of being labeled a villain. New Year's Eve came. Zoe was at a friend's house for a sleepover party. I'd been invited to a gathering but decided to stay home. Sometimes quiet reflection beat forced celebration. At 11:30 p.m., I got a text from a number I didn't immediately recognize. This is Derek. I know it's late, but I wanted you to know something. I got Employee of the Month at work today. First time in my life I've ever gotten recognized like that. The boss said I'm reliable, skilled, and have a great attitude. Me. Reliable. I keep reading that word over and over. Congratulations, I texted back. You earned it. I did. That's the thing. I actually earned it. Not because someone felt sorry for me or gave me a chance out of pity. Because I showed up every day and did good work. Thank you for making me see that I could. You did that yourself. You lit the match. I just had to decide whether to let it burn. At midnight, I stood on my back porch watching fireworks explode in the distance. Neighbors celebrating, strangers marking the passage of time, the collective hope that a new year brings new possibilities. My phone buzzed again. This time, a group text from Mom to both Vanessa and me. My New Year's resolution: trust my daughters to know what's best for their own families. I love you both. Thank you for teaching an old woman that love sometimes means stepping back. I read it twice, feeling something shift in my chest. Forgiveness, maybe. Understanding, definitely. Mom had done her best with the tools she had. We all did. February brought Valentine's Day and parent-teacher conferences. Zoe's teacher praised her empathy and leadership. She has a gift for standing up for other kids, the teacher said. Especially when someone's being treated unfairly. She does it kindly but firmly. It's rare in someone so young. I thought about the night Vanessa had demanded Zoe's room. About how Zoe had stood on those stairs, processing what it meant when adults failed to protect children. About the example I'd set by refusing to sacrifice her comfort for someone else's poor planning. Children learn more from what we do than what we say. Zoe had learned that her well-being mattered. That boundaries were healthy. That love didn't mean accepting mistreatment. Those were lessons worth teaching, even when the teaching was hard.
Story 4. My wife of 6 years threw me out of our home at midnight after her 14-year-old stepdaughter tearfully claimed I'd made her uncomfortable with inappropriate comments. When I tried to defend myself, my wife screamed, "Get out. I always choose my daughter." I just packed a bag and left without another word. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, she called to ask if I'd reflected on my behavior and was ready to apologize to them both. I met her at a coffee shop and silently handed her 2 things: divorce papers and security camera footage showing her daughter admitting to her best friend that she'd made everything up to get rid of me. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and regret. Michelle sat across from me, fingers wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched, her eyes carrying that specific brand of exhaustion that comes from 3 weeks of poor sleep and poorer decisions. "So?" she asked, impatient already. "Have you thought about what you did?" I pulled the manila envelope from my messenger bag and placed it on the table between us. Her eyes dropped to it, then returned to my face, searching for something I wasn't prepared to give her anymore. "What's this?" "Open it." She hesitated, perhaps sensing the shift in atmosphere, the way I sat differently than I had 3 weeks ago when she'd screamed at me to get out of the house we'd bought together. The house where I'd installed motion-activated security cameras 6 months earlier after our neighborhood had 3 break-ins. The house where her daughter Amber had perfected the art of manipulation while I'd been too focused on keeping the peace to see it happening. Michelle reached for the envelope with the caution of someone approaching a snake. She pulled out a USB drive first. A small label on it read "Living Room Camera, Tuesday, October 3rd. "You already received the divorce papers through your attorney," I said. "This is what you haven't seen yet." "What is this?" "The truth," I said. "Watch it when you get home. Or don't. Doesn't matter to me anymore." Let me back up. 6 years ago, I met Michelle at a marketing conference in Phoenix. She was presenting on social media engagement strategies, and I was there representing the tech startup I'd helped build from nothing into something resembling success. We got coffee after her panel, talked for 4 hours straight, and I felt something I hadn't felt since college: genuine connection that didn't require performance or pretense. She had a daughter from her first marriage. Amber was 8 then, gap-toothed and energetic, running through the park where we had our second date while Michelle and I sat on a bench and talked about the future. I wasn't looking to be anyone's father figure. My own dad had died when I was 15, and I'd spent enough time in therapy to know I carried complicated feelings about family structures and masculine role models. But Amber made it easy at first. She'd climb onto the couch next to me during movie nights, ask me to help with her math homework, request that I attend her school plays. Michelle watched these interactions with visible relief. Her ex-husband had moved to Oregon and saw Amber maybe twice a year, sending checks but little else. "You're good with her," Michelle told me one night after I'd stayed up late helping Amber build a solar system model for science class. "She needs someone stable." I proposed a year later. We married in a small ceremony at a vineyard upstate, and Amber was our flower girl. In the photos from that day, she's smiling broadly, gap now filled with straight white teeth courtesy of 2 years of orthodontics that Michelle's insurance barely covered. I'd helped with the payments. Seemed like the right thing to do. The first 3 years felt manageable. Amber went through typical preteen phases: obsessions with certain YouTube channels, friendship drama at school, requests for increasingly expensive sneakers. Michelle worked long hours at her advertising agency, often bringing work home on weekends. I'd transitioned to a senior developer role at a different company, fully remote, which meant I was home when Amber got back from school. I'd make her snacks, ask about her day, help with homework when she needed it. Standard step-parent stuff. She called me Derek, never Dad, which suited me fine. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. The shift started about a year ago, subtle at first. Amber turned 13 and began spending more time in her room, door closed, headphones on. Normal teenage withdrawal, Michelle assured me. Her own mother had barely survived Michelle's adolescence, apparently, so this registered as expected behavior. But there were moments that felt different. Amber would emerge from her room and look at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, not hostility exactly, but something calculating. She'd interrupt conversations between Michelle and me with sudden needs or dramatic announcements. When Michelle suggested we take a weekend trip for our anniversary, Amber had a meltdown about being left alone, despite being 13 and perfectly capable of staying with her grandmother. We canceled the trip. "She's going through something," Michelle said. "Hormones, probably. Girls this age get emotional." I accepted this explanation because I wanted to believe it, and because questioning it felt like overstepping my role. I was the stepfather, the guy who'd entered their lives when the foundation was already poured. My job was to support, not to question Michelle's parenting instincts. 6 months ago, Amber started high school. She joined the drama club and suddenly had a new circle of friends, particularly a girl named Jessica who seemed to be over at our house constantly. They'd lock themselves in Amber's room for hours, music playing, occasional laughter filtering through the door. "It's good she has close friends," Michelle said. "Makes the transition easier." I agreed, though something about Jessica bothered me in ways I couldn't articulate. She had a way of looking at adults like she was studying them, cataloging weaknesses. When she spoke to Michelle, her voice took on a saccharine quality that felt performed. When she spoke to me, she was polite but distant, as if I were furniture. Then came the night everything shattered. It was a Thursday. Michelle had worked late, arriving home around 9:30 looking drained. I'd made dinner, chicken stir-fry, one of the few dishes I could execute without crisis, and saved her a plate. She ate while scrolling through her phone, responding to work emails. Amber had been in her room since getting home from school. This had become routine. She'd emerge for dinner, eat quickly, then retreat. Michelle worried sometimes that Amber wasn't socializing enough, but then Jessica would appear and they'd spend entire weekends together, so the concern would evaporate. Around 10:30, I was in my home office finishing up some code reviews when I heard raised voices. I pulled off my headphones. Michelle and Amber were arguing in the hallway, something about a borrowed shirt that had been returned stained. Typical mother-daughter friction. I turned my attention back to my screen. Then I heard crying. Not arguing crying, but the kind of raw, gasping sobs that signal genuine distress. I stood up, moved to the doorway. Michelle had her arms around Amber, who was shaking, face buried against her mother's shoulder. "What happened?" I asked. Michelle's head snapped toward me. Her expression carried something I'd never seen directed at me before, cold suspicion mixed with protective rage. "Amber needs to talk to me alone." "Okay," I said, confused but compliant. "Is everyone all right?" "Just go to the living room, Derek." I went. Sat on the couch and waited, stomach beginning to knot with undefined anxiety. Something had shifted, the air pressure dropping before a storm. 20 minutes passed. Then Michelle appeared in the doorway, face rigid. "Did you say something to Amber? Something inappropriate?" The question hit me like cold water. "What? No. What are you talking about?" "She says you've been making comments. About her appearance. About her body." The room tilted slightly. "That's not true. I would never. She's crying in her room right now because she finally worked up the courage to tell me." Michelle's voice was rising, controlled fury breaking through. "How long has this been going on?" "Nothing has been going on. Michelle, I swear, I have never said anything inappropriate to Amber. This is. She said you told her she was developing nicely. That you asked if she needed help picking out a bathing suit. That you commented on her jeans being tight." Each accusation landed like a physical blow. I felt my face go hot, then cold. None of that is true. Not one word of it. Why would she say those things? Why would she lie? "I don't know, but I'm telling you, I never. Get out." The words came flat, final. I stared at her, trying to process what was happening. 3 hours ago, we'd been a normal family. Now I was being accused of something monstrous by a 14-year-old who'd apparently been storing these fabrications like ammunition. "Michelle, please, let's talk about this rationally. Get out of my house. It's our house. We both pay the mortgage. I don't care. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." Her hand was on her phone. She meant it. I could see it in her eyes. She'd already decided I was guilty. Already chosen to believe her daughter without question, without investigation, without giving me any opportunity to defend myself beyond these few desperate minutes. "I always choose my daughter," she said, and there was something almost rehearsed about it, like she'd been preparing for this moment. "Always. Over anyone." I went to our bedroom, my former bedroom, and packed a bag. T-shirts, jeans, laptop, phone charger. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip the duffel. Michelle stood in the doorway watching, arms crossed, expression unyielding. "If you try to contact Amber, I won't," I said. "But this is wrong. You know me, Michelle. You know I would never. I thought I knew you." I brushed past her, walked down the stairs, out the front door. My car was in the driveway. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, staring at the house, at the lit window that was Amber's room. A silhouette moved across the curtains. She was watching. That's when something clicked in my brain, some survival instinct overriding the shock. I pulled out my phone and opened the security camera app. We had 3 cameras, front door, back door, living room. I'd installed them myself and had them connected to cloud storage with a 30-day rolling backup. The living room camera pointed toward the couch but captured part of the kitchen and the hallway leading to the bedrooms. I'd positioned it that way deliberately after reading articles about optimal coverage for home security. I started scrolling through footage from the past week, not even sure what I was looking for. Maybe evidence that Amber and I had normal interactions. Maybe something that would prove I'd never said what she claimed. Then I saw it. 2 days ago, Tuesday afternoon. Amber and Jessica on the couch, visible in the camera's field of view. I cranked up the volume on my phone. Telling her tonight, Amber was saying. After she gets home from work. Jessica leaned in, excited. You're really doing it? Yeah. I've been planning it for weeks. She'll totally believe me. What if Derek denies it? Doesn't matter. She'll always choose me. That's what moms do, they believe their daughters about this stuff. It's like, automatic. But why do you even want him gone? He seems okay. Amber's face hardened in a way that made her look years older. He takes up too much of her attention. She's always asking him what he thinks about stuff, what he wants to do. Before he showed up, it was just us. We were fine. We didn't need him. That's cold, Jessica said, but she was smiling. You're kind of scary when you want something. Whatever. He'll be gone by tomorrow, and things can go back to normal. Just me and Mom again. I sat in my car, phone clutched in my hand, watching this exchange. Part of me felt vindicated, here was proof of the lie. But another part felt something much darker. This 14-year-old girl had calculated how to destroy my life and had executed her plan with the precision of someone much older. I should have marched back into the house right then, showed Michelle the footage, forced her to watch her daughter admit to fabricating everything. But I was too stunned, too hurt by the fact that Michelle hadn't even hesitated. 6 years together, and she'd thrown me out within an hour of Amber's accusation. I drove to a budget hotel near the highway, checked in, and sat on the stiff mattress staring at the wall until sunrise. Then I called my lawyer. Brian had handled the legal work when Michelle and I bought the house. He was sharp, efficient, and expensive. I explained the situation, forwarded him the video file. Don't contact your wife, he said after watching it. Don't try to explain. She's made her position clear. File for divorce immediately, and we'll use this footage to ensure you're protected from any future accusations. She might press charges, I said. File a police report. Let her. This video will shut that down fast. But Derek, I'm serious, no contact. If she reaches out, don't respond. Forward everything to me. You need to be completely strategic about this. I spent the next 3 weeks in a fog. I moved into a short-term rental apartment, notified work that I was dealing with a family emergency, and tried to process what had happened. Brian filed the divorce papers. Michelle's attorney contacted him with outrage, threats, demands that I return to the house to discuss things like adults. Brian shut it all down with calm professionalism. No discussion. The marriage was over. His client would be pursuing divorce on grounds of false accusation and emotional distress. Michelle tried calling me directly twice. I didn't answer. She sent texts, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. Amber is devastated that you just left. That last one made me laugh, a bitter sound in my empty apartment. Amber was devastated. Sure. I spent hours watching that video, studying Amber's face, trying to understand what I'd missed. Had there been signs earlier? Moments where she tested the waters, seen how easily she could manipulate situations? I thought about the time she'd told Michelle I'd forgotten to pick her up from school when I'd actually been sitting in the parking lot for 20 minutes while she deliberately stayed late with friends, then acted like I'd abandoned her. Michelle had believed her immediately, given me a lecture about responsibility. Or the time she'd claimed I'd eaten her leftover pizza when I'd been out of the house all day. Small thing, but Michelle had gotten annoyed with me about it, and I'd apologized rather than push back. Amber had been running experiments, learning what worked. And she'd gotten better at it, more confident, until she felt ready to execute the big play. I showed the video to my therapist during an emergency session. Dr. Patricia had been seeing me on and off for years, helping me work through my father's death and my complicated feelings about family. Some children from divorced homes develop manipulative tendencies, she explained. Particularly if they felt they lost control during the divorce. Making you leave might have been about regaining that sense of control over her environment. She destroyed my marriage. She's 14. Her brain isn't fully developed. She doesn't truly understand the consequences of what she's done. That doesn't make it okay. No, Dr. Patricia agreed. It doesn't. But holding on to anger won't help you heal. You need to focus on protecting yourself legally and emotionally moving forward. Sound advice. Hard to follow when I woke up every morning in an apartment that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner instead of Michelle's lavender lotion and Amber's fruity shampoo. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Michelle's attorney tried various tactics, demanding I pay for Amber's therapy to deal with the trauma of my behavior, insisting I continue covering the mortgage since I'd abandoned the family, arguing that I should be barred from any future contact with Amber. Brian countered every move with clinical precision. He filed a copy of the security footage with the court, along with a statement from a child psychologist who'd reviewed it and confirmed that Amber's statements demonstrated calculated deception rather than genuine trauma response. Michelle's attorney went quiet after that. Then came the settlement offer. I'd take my equity from the house, we'd split the joint accounts 50-50, no spousal support either direction, clean break. She's trying to make this go away fast, Brian observed. She knows the footage makes her look bad. If this goes to trial, every detail becomes public record. Let's settle, I said. I didn't want a trial. Didn't want to sit in a courtroom while Amber's lies were dissected publicly. Didn't want to see Michelle's face as she realized what her daughter had done. Except part of me did want her to understand. Wanted her to feel the weight of choosing wrong, of believing so quickly, of throwing away 6 years without even asking the right questions. That's when Michelle called and asked if I'd reflected on my behavior and was ready to apologize. The audacity of it made my hands shake. She still thought I'd done something wrong. Still believed Amber. Either she hadn't watched the security footage Brian had submitted to the court, or she'd watched it and convinced herself it meant something other than what it clearly showed. I agreed to meet her at the coffee shop. Neutral territory. Public space. Now here we sat, divorce papers and USB drive on the table between us, and Michelle looked like someone had yanked the ground from under her feet. I don't understand, she said, voice small. What am I supposed to see on this? The conversation your daughter had with Jessica 2 days before she accused me. The one where she admits she made everything up to get rid of me. Michelle's face cycled through emotions, disbelief, confusion, the first stirrings of horror. That's not possible. Watch it. Derek, if this is some kind of trick, it's timestamped footage from our home security system. The one I installed. The one you forgot existed. Her hand moved to her mouth. Oh my gosh. I'm curious, I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage simmering underneath. Did you ever even consider that I might be telling the truth? Did you ask yourself if maybe, just maybe, Amber had a reason to lie? She's my daughter. And I was your husband. 6 years, Michelle. We built a life together. You didn't even give me the benefit of the doubt. She was crying. She was terrified. She was acting. And she's apparently very good at it, which makes sense given she was in drama club. Michelle closed her eyes. A tear escaped, tracked down her cheek. I need to talk to her. That's between you two. I'm done with both of you. Derek, please, sign the papers. Brian will coordinate the rest. I'll be out of your life completely in about 6 weeks. I stood up. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back before she could make contact. The touch I'd once craved now felt contaminated by her willingness to believe the worst of me. I loved you, I said. That's the part that really guts me. I loved you, and I loved trying to be good to Amber. I thought we were a family. Turns out I was just a placeholder until she decided she didn't want me around anymore. This isn't fair. You're right. It isn't. But life rarely is. I walked out of the coffee shop into autumn sunlight that felt too bright for the moment. My phone buzzed before I reached my car, Brian texting to confirm Michelle's attorney had received the settlement documents. 3 days later, Michelle signed. Brian called to tell me it was done, officially over, just waiting for the judge to finalize everything. She tried to negotiate, Brian said. Wanted to push the timeline, add clauses about future contact. I shut it down. You're free, Derek. Free felt like the wrong word. Untethered, maybe. Adrift. I'd lost my marriage, my home, my sense of security, all because a teenager decided I was inconvenient. I thought about calling Michelle, asking if she'd confronted Amber, if there'd been consequences. But Dr. Patricia's voice echoed in my head, focus on moving forward, not on revenge or validation. So I didn't call. Didn't ask. Packed up my rental apartment and moved to a different neighborhood entirely, somewhere Michelle and Amber would never accidentally run into me at the grocery store. I deleted social media, blocked Michelle's number, started over in the ways people start over after catastrophic loss. New apartment, new routines, new coffee shop where baristas didn't know my name or my regular order. Work helped. I threw myself into projects, volunteered for the complex assignments nobody else wanted, stayed late at my home office writing code until my eyes burned. Nights were harder, too much silence, too much space to think about what I'd lost and how quickly it had vanished. My younger brother called every few days to check on me. Marcus lived in Denver with his wife and 2 kids, and he'd always liked Michelle, had been genuinely happy when we got married. I can't believe she just believed Amber like that, he said during one call. Without even investigating. Maternal instinct, I offered. Or maybe she'd been looking for a reason to end things and Amber gave her one. You don't really think that. I don't know what I think anymore. You should date, Marcus suggested. Get back out there. It's been 2 months. So? You didn't do anything wrong. Why should you sit around feeling guilty? He had a point, but the idea of explaining this story to someone new felt exhausting. Hi, I'm Derek. My ex-wife kicked me out because her teenage daughter fabricated sexual harassment claims to get rid of me. Wasn't exactly an attractive introduction. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got an unexpected email. The sender was Jessica's mother, Catherine. I heard about what happened with you and Michelle, the email read. Amber confessed everything to Jessica after Michelle confronted her with your security footage. Jessica came to me in tears about it. I wanted you to know that I've removed Amber from Jessica's life. What she did was unconscionable, and I won't allow my daughter to remain friends with someone capable of that level of manipulation. I'm sorry you went through this. You deserved better. I read the email 3 times, surprised by the validation from an unexpected source. At least someone in Amber's orbit saw the situation clearly. I responded briefly, thanking Catherine for reaching out and for taking the situation seriously. Then I closed my laptop and tried not to think about Amber's face when her best friend suddenly stopped talking to her. Tried and failed. Dr. Patricia noticed the shift during our next session. You're angrier now than you were right after it happened. I'm processing. You're fantasizing about Amber facing consequences. She wasn't wrong. I'd spent considerable time imagining scenarios where Amber's lies caught up with her, where other people saw through her manipulations, where Michelle finally understood the monster she'd enabled, where Amber's future relationships crumbled under the weight of her dishonesty. It's normal to want justice, Dr. Patricia said. But you need to distinguish between justice and revenge. Justice is about balance and accountability. Revenge is about inflicting pain. What if they're the same thing? They rarely are. And pursuing revenge usually causes more damage to the person seeking it than to the target. Sound advice, as usual. I nodded, agreed, and then continued entertaining darker thoughts when I was alone. Months passed. I fell into new patterns, made new acquaintances at the climbing gym I joined to have something physical to do with my rage. I went on a few dates arranged by well-meaning friends, none of which progressed beyond stilted dinners where I couldn't figure out how to be present. The divorce settlement money sat in my bank account like a monument to failure. I should have used it for something meaningful, down payment on a new place, investment account, therapy fund. Instead, it just accumulated interest while I lived in my rental apartment and tried to figure out who I was supposed to be now. Then, 6 months after the coffee shop meeting, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Derek? It's Michelle. I almost hung up. Probably should have. But curiosity won. What do you want? I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago, but I was ashamed. Silence. I waited. After I watched the video you gave me, I confronted Amber. She denied it at first, said you must have edited it somehow. But I pushed, and eventually she admitted it. Everything. She made it all up because she wanted things to go back to how they were before you. I know, I said flatly. I watched the same video. Derek, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have at least investigated before throwing me out at midnight? Before choosing to believe I was a predator based on zero evidence? Yes. All of that. I was wrong. The apology sat between us, inadequate and far too late. 6 months ago, it might have meant something. Now it felt like background noise. Amber's in therapy now, Michelle continued. Real therapy, not just someone who validates whatever she says. The therapist thinks she has some attachment issues from the divorce with her father, and she was acting out her fear of abandonment by trying to control her environment. Fascinating. So she destroyed my life because of daddy issues. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Michelle. That's the point. But I appreciate you calling to let me know. Really ties everything up neatly. Derek, please. We're done. We've been done. This conversation doesn't change anything. I just want you to know that I see it now. What she did. What I did. And I'm trying to make it right. You can't make it right. There's no version of this where it gets made right. You believed your daughter's lies over 6 years of me showing up every single day. You threw me out without hesitation. That's who you are, Michelle. That's the choice you made. I heard her crying on the other end of the line. Once, that sound would have broken something in me, would have made me want to fix it, comfort her, make it better. Now I felt nothing but a distant pity. I'm going to hang up now, I said. Don't call again. Wait, Derek, I still love you. I know I don't deserve it, but I ended the call. For a long moment, I sat on my couch staring at my phone, processing Michelle's confession and apology. She'd called hoping for what? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? A chance to ease her own guilt? Whatever she'd wanted, she wasn't going to get it from me. I called Dr. Patricia and left a message. She apologized. Amber admitted everything. Somehow I feel worse than I did before. Dr. Patricia called back an hour later. Closure isn't always clean. Sometimes it's just confirmation that leaving was correct. So what now? Now you keep building your new life. You've been in survival mode. Maybe it's time to shift into living mode. Easier said than done, but I understood the point. I'd been treading water for months, maintaining but not progressing. Time to swim towards something instead of just staying afloat. I started small. Updated my resume, began quietly looking for new job opportunities in different cities. Put in an offer on a condo across town, something that would be fully mine with no shared history embedded in the walls. Signed up for a coding bootcamp focused on emerging technologies, not because I needed it professionally but because learning something new felt like progress. And slowly, incrementally, the weight began to lift. Marcus noticed during a video call. You look different. Better. I'm trying. Good. You deserve to be happy, man. What Amber did, what Michelle allowed, that's on them. Not you. I know that intellectually. Emotionally takes longer to catch up. Give it time. You've got plenty of it now. Another month passed. I accepted a new position at a tech company in Seattle, gave notice on my apartment, began planning the move. Fresh start, different city, no memories of Michelle or Amber around every corner. The condo sold quickly. I signed papers, coordinated movers, booked a one-way flight. On my last night in town, I drove past the old house, Michelle's house now, legally and financially. The lights were on. Through the front window, I could see movement. Michelle and Amber, probably having dinner, living their lives in the space I'd helped create. For a moment, I felt the familiar anger rise. But then I drove away, and the feeling faded. They were someone else's problem now. Someone else's story. I had my own to write. Seattle turned out to be exactly what I needed: rain and coffee and proximity to mountains where I could lose myself hiking on weekends. The new job challenged me in good ways, pushed me to develop skills I'd been neglecting. I made friends slowly, carefully, with people who knew nothing about my past except what I chose to share. When I did eventually start dating seriously, almost a year after the divorce, I was honest about what had happened. Not on the first date, but eventually, when it mattered. Sarah listened to the whole story without interrupting, sitting across from me in a Thai restaurant near her apartment. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. That's horrifying, she finally said. I can't imagine how that must have felt. It was rough. But you survived it. Built a new life. That takes strength. Or stubbornness. She smiled. Maybe both. Sarah had her own complicated history, an ex-husband who'd emptied their bank accounts and disappeared to Costa Rica, leaving her with debt and trust issues. We understood each other's damage in ways that felt both sad and necessary. Do you ever think about revenge? She asked once, months into our relationship. Like, do you ever want to make sure Amber faces consequences? Used to, I admitted. But revenge is exhausting. And ultimately pointless. She's going to grow up and realize what she did. That's punishment enough. You're more forgiving than I would be. Not forgiving. Just done. There's a difference. Forgiveness implies absolution, a wiping clean of the slate. What I felt wasn't that. It was simply the recognition that Amber and Michelle no longer had power over my emotional state. They existed in my past, in a closed chapter, and I'd moved on to new pages. Sarah and I moved in together after 18 months. She had a son from her first marriage, 8-year-old Tyler, and I was careful about boundaries, about not rushing into a parental role, about making sure everyone had space to adjust. But Tyler made it easy in ways Amber never had. He was straightforward, asked direct questions, told the truth even when it was inconvenient. One night while I was helping him with homework, he looked up at me and said, "My dad left us. Are you going to leave too?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I'm not planning on it, I told him honestly. But I can't predict the future. What I can promise is that if I'm here completely. No half measures. He considered this, then nodded. Okay. That's good enough. Kids appreciate honesty more than adults give them credit for. 2 years after moving to Seattle, I got another unexpected email. This one was from Amber. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I stared at the email for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it unread, maintain the boundary I'd established. Another part, the part that had spent so much time in therapy processing this exact situation, felt curious about what she'd say. The email was long, rambling, clearly written and rewritten multiple times. She was 16 now, apparently, and had been in intensive therapy. She understood that what she'd done was wrong. She'd destroyed my marriage and my relationship with her mother because she was selfish and scared and didn't know how to handle her feelings about her family changing. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she wrote. "I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I think about what I did every single day. It's the worst thing I've ever done, and I can't take it back. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm so sorry." I read the email 3 times, then forwarded it to Dr. Patricia without responding to Amber. "What do you think?" I asked during our next session. What do you think? Classic therapist response. I smiled despite myself. I think she's 16 and her brain is more developed than it was at 14. I think she probably does feel genuine remorse. And I think it doesn't change anything for me. Do you want to respond? No. It would be cruel to respond with anger, and dishonest to respond with forgiveness I don't feel. Better to leave it alone. That's very mature of you. Or very conflict averse. Maybe both. I never responded to Amber's email. Filed it away in a folder and moved on. Some apologies are offered more for the apologizer's benefit than the recipient's, and I didn't feel obligated to provide absolution just because she'd finally developed a conscience. Sarah and I got married 3 years after we started dating. Small ceremony, close friends, Tyler as our ring bearer grinning the entire time. No drama, no manipulation, no teenagers plotting to destroy what we'd built. Just two people who'd survived their own catastrophes and decided to build something stable together. On our wedding night, Sarah asked if I ever thought about Michelle and Amber anymore. Sometimes, I admitted. But they're like characters from a book I read years ago. I remember the story, but they don't feel connected to my life now. Good, Sarah said. They don't deserve space in your head. She was right, but trauma doesn't follow logic. Occasionally I'd see a teenage girl who looked like Amber and feel a spike of old anger. Or I'd smell lavender lotion and remember Michelle's bathroom cabinet. These moments became less frequent over time, spreading out like ripples from a stone thrown into still water, eventually smoothing back to calm. 5 years after the coffee shop meeting, I was exactly where I needed to be, new city, new family, new version of myself built from the wreckage of what came before. Michelle and Amber existed somewhere in the same world, living consequences I'd never see and probably wouldn't care about if I did. The revenge, such as it was, had been in moving on. In refusing to let Amber's lies define the rest of my life. In building something better than what I'd lost. Sometimes the best payback is proving that what someone took from you wasn't irreplaceable after all. Marcus called one evening while I was cooking dinner, Sarah helping Tyler with a school project in the living room. Random question, he said. Do you ever regret how you handled everything? Like, do you wish you'd fought harder to make Michelle see the truth earlier? No, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. She showed me exactly who she was in that moment. Fighting harder would have just delayed the inevitable. You sound at peace with it. Mostly. Still have bad days. But mostly I'm just grateful I got out before it got worse. Could it have gotten worse? Michelle could have pressed charges based on Amber's lies. I could have ended up on a registry. Could have lost my career. Yeah, it could have been much worse. Fair point. Glad you're doing well, man. You deserve it. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, my and Sarah's kitchen, in our house, in our city, and felt the full weight of that gratitude. I'd lost a marriage, a home, 6 years of my life. But I'd gained clarity, strength, and eventually something more sustainable than what I'd had with Michelle. The fantasy of revenge had been in watching Michelle realize her mistake, seeing Amber face consequences, making them hurt the way they'd hurt me. The reality of moving forward turned out to be better than any revenge I could have orchestrated. Because while they were stuck in the wreckage of that night when everything shattered, I'd walked away and built something new. They had to live with what they'd done. I just had to live. And I was doing that pretty well. Tyler called me dad for the first time about 6 months after the wedding. We were at the hardware store buying supplies for a treehouse project, and he couldn't reach something on a high shelf. Dad, can you grab that? I froze for a second, then reached up and got it for him. Sure, buddy. He didn't seem to notice the significance of what he'd said, but I did. Sarah did too. She'd been standing nearby and caught my eye, smiled in that way that said she knew exactly what that moment meant. Amber had taken the opportunity to be a father figure away from me. Tyler had given it back in his own time, his own way, without drama or manipulation. Just a kid deciding he trusted me enough to give me that title. Perhaps that was the real resolution, not confronting those who'd wronged me, not forcing them to acknowledge their mistakes, but simply being present for new people who valued my presence. Building better things with better materials. The divorce papers and security footage sat in a safety deposit box somewhere, evidence of a crisis survived. I hadn't looked at them in years and probably never would again. They'd served their purpose, protected me legally, proved my innocence, allowed me to move on with minimal damage. Now they were just relics, artifacts from someone else's life. The man who'd sat in that coffee shop with Michelle, silently handing her the truth she'd refused to seek, felt distant to me now. I understood him, felt sympathy for his pain, but I wasn't him anymore. I'd become someone else through the process of surviving and rebuilding. Sarah understood this without me having to explain it. She'd gone through her own transformation after her ex-husband's betrayal. We recognized each other as people who'd been broken and had carefully reconstructed themselves, paying attention to the cracks so they didn't become fault lines. Do you think they're happy? Sarah asked one night, out of nowhere. We were on the couch, Tyler asleep upstairs, late night television murmuring in the background. Who? Michelle and Amber. I thought about it. I don't know. I hope they figured their stuff out. I don't wish them harm. Really? After everything? Really? Wishing them harm would mean they still have power over my emotional state. They don't. They're just people I used to know who made terrible decisions. Sarah kissed my temple. You're a better person than I am, or more exhausted by holding grudges. That too. The truth was messier than I made it sound. Some days I did wish harm on them, wished Amber would face consequences that taught her manipulating people had costs, wished Michelle would experience the particular pain of realizing she'd thrown away something good for something false. But those days became fewer and further between, and when they occurred, I acknowledged the feelings and then let them go. Holding on to anger was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Dr. Patricia had told me that years ago, and eventually I'd internalized it enough to believe it. My life now bore no resemblance to my life with Michelle. Different city, different career trajectory, different family structure, different version of myself. The continuity existed only in my memory, in the lessons learned, in the scar tissue that had made me more careful but not completely closed off. That felt like winning, even if it didn't look like the revenge fantasies I'd entertained in the early days. The coffee shop meeting played in my memory sometimes, usually unbidden. Michelle's face as she realized what was on that USB drive. The way her hands had trembled. The dawning horror as she understood she'd been completely, catastrophically wrong. I'd wanted to see that expression for weeks after she threw me out. Wanted her to know the truth, to feel the weight of her mistake. When it finally happened, it had felt hollow, satisfying for about 30 seconds before giving way to overwhelming sadness that we'd gotten to that point at all. Revenge in movies is clean, cathartic, restorative. Real revenge is messy and unsatisfying and often creates more problems than it solves. The actual victory had been in documentation, legal protection, and walking away with my integrity intact. Not dramatic, but effective. Tyler asked me once about my first marriage. He was 11 by then, old enough to understand divorce conceptually. What happened with your first wife? We wanted different things, I said, which was technically true if you considered truth and trust versus believing lies as different things. Mom told me it was complicated. It was. But it taught me a lot about what I needed in a relationship. Like what? Like someone who trusts me. Someone who asks questions before making assumptions. Someone who sees me clearly instead of just seeing what they're afraid of. He nodded, processing. Mom does that? Yeah. She does. Good. I'd be sad if you guys broke up. Me too, buddy. Me too. Simple conversation, but it crystallized something important. The life I'd built post-Michelle was worth protecting not because it erased what happened before, but because it represented learning and growth and conscious choice-making. I hadn't just moved on from Michelle and Amber. I'd moved toward something better. That distinction mattered more than I'd realized. Years folded into each other. Tyler graduated middle school, started high school, became a teenager who sometimes reminded me painfully of Amber, not in manipulation, but in that particular adolescent self-absorption that makes everything feel like the end of the world. But Tyler never lied about serious things. Never tried to destroy relationships for his benefit. He was just a normal kid navigating normal teenage challenges, and I was grateful for his normalcy in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Sarah and I bought a cabin near the mountains for weekend getaways. I made partner at my firm. Tyler got accepted to a summer program for aspiring engineers. Life accumulated small victories that added up to something stable and good. I thought about Michelle and Amber less frequently than I thought about what to make for dinner or whether we needed to repaint the living room. They'd become background characters in my life story, mentioned in passing if context required it but otherwise forgotten for long stretches. Until the day I ran into Michelle at a conference. I was in Denver for a tech industry event, sitting in a hotel ballroom listening to a panel on AI ethics, when I saw her 3 rows ahead. She'd cut her hair shorter, dyed it darker, but the way she tilted her head when concentrating was unmistakable. My first instinct was to leave before she saw me. But that felt cowardly, so I stayed, half listening to the panel while my brain spun through scenarios of what I'd say if we made eye contact. Marcus had texted earlier asking if I wanted to meet for dinner, but I'd told him I had client meetings all evening. A lie, but I wasn't ready to explain to my brother that I'd become the kind of person who attended conferences alone and avoided human connection. We didn't. The panel ended, and she gathered her things and headed toward the exit. I waited a few minutes, then left through a different door. Close call, I thought. Then felt annoyed that I'd classified it as a close call, as if Michelle seeing me would have been some kind of crisis. Later that evening, I was at the hotel bar with colleagues when I saw her again. She was with a group, laughing at something someone said, and she looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in years when we were married. Good for her, I thought, and meant it. Whatever she and Amber had worked through, whatever therapy had accomplished, it seemed to have led somewhere positive. That was fine. People grew and changed. Even people who'd made terrible mistakes. One of my colleagues followed my gaze. You know her? Used to, I said. Long time ago. Wanna go say hi? No. It's better this way. Michelle never saw me. I finished my drink, went up to my room, called Sarah to talk about nothing important until I felt settled again. The encounter had stirred up old feelings, not anger or hurt anymore, just a strange melancholy about paths not taken and people who used to be central to my existence. You okay? Sarah asked, sensing something beneath my chatter. I saw Michelle today. Didn't talk to her. Just saw her across a crowded room. How do you feel? Mostly okay. Little weird. Mostly okay. That's good. Shows you've really moved on. Yeah. I think I have. And it was true. Seeing Michelle had been strange but not destabilizing. She'd become someone I used to know, someone who'd been important once but wasn't anymore. The story of us had ended, and I'd written new chapters that had nothing to do with her. The revenge had never been about making her suffer. It had been about proving to myself that I could survive her believing the worst of me, that I could build something new from nothing, that one person's lies couldn't define my entire future. Mission accomplished. Years later, in a hotel bar in Denver where Michelle laughed with colleagues and I felt nothing but distant goodwill and relief that I wasn't part of her world anymore. The payback had been in living well. In finding Sarah and Tyler. In becoming someone who knew his worth and wouldn't accept anything less than full trust and partnership. In recognizing that sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't confrontation or retaliation, but simply walking away and building something better elsewhere. I flew home to Seattle the next day, hugged Sarah and Tyler at the airport, drove to our house in our neighborhood with our life, and felt profoundly grateful for the unexpected gift Michelle and Amber had given me, the clear-eyed certainty that I deserved better, and the motivation to go find it. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction. And I'd reconstructed myself into someone who didn't need Michelle's apology or Amber's regret to feel whole. I'd found wholeness on my own terms, in my own time, with people who valued what I brought to their lives. That felt like winning in every way that mattered.